Oh, hey, Alice. How's it going? Good timing. We got Josh Loney from The Absurd. How you doing?
The dessert.
The Dessert.
That's me. I'm doing good, dude.
What's your favorite kind of dessert?
Milkshakes.
Nice. Good answer. What kind of milkshake?
I mean, is there really that much of a difference between milkshakes? They're all awesome, but
There's flavors.
There's-
Those are differences.
yeah, but like
But
to me,
that's when you
the
get an
quality
ice cream.
is negligible, you know.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's when you get in the ice cream.
But like the milkshake that I had in Nashville was, God, it's right next to Sadie's. I can't remember what the place is called. It's this cookie dough place, and you choose your own cookie dough,
Okay.
and then they make a milkshake with either vanilla or chocolate mixed with that cookie dough.
Nice.
That shit was awesome. So for my birthday, I had 2 of those.
Yeah.
Mostly because all my other friends were full. They're like, we don't want them. I'm like, bitch, I'm trying at least 2 of these. Like, I don't
Right.
give a shit. You know.
You know, if it's a milkshake, you can't let that go to waste.
Yeah, for sure.
No. And so I drank 2 milkshakes in a solid like 10 minutes. Did not feel great after it, but
So, you were going to play a festival here pretty soon, but you have already played this festival by the time this episode went up. So how was it?
oh, it was super rad, dude.
Awesome, dude. That's all I was hoping it'd be.
The Ripple Fest is gonna be, or it was,
Yeah.
a good time.
Mhm.
Because Ripple Fest is one of the hotter up and coming rock festivals right now, because the festival games is kind of changing. You know, like a lot of people are not into the outdoor festival thing anymore. Like you're seeing less investment in it financially, because unless you're doing it in the desert, like this one, you always risk rain, right? Like Bonnaroo's been rained out how many times, you know?
More
And-
times than they care to think about.
Right.
You said Ripple Fest is in Texas?
Yeah, it's in Austin.
Okay.
So I went last year just to check it out, because last year was like the first one, and Ripple's one of the. It's got like a bunch of diehard fans. It's a heavy rock label, but the last one apparently went so well that this one they've classed up to beyond Ripple artists. So they've got some other smaller artists like us, but then they also have like Eagles of Death Metal, The Sword, who are
Oh,
definitely
nice.
not on that.
Nice.
Nice.
They're not on their label roster, but like the
Right.
Sword's from Texas. Eagles of Death Metal goes well in the desert.
Oh yeah, that's desert rock right there.
They apparently almost had the Melvins this year too. So I'm hoping next year, if they let us back next year, hopefully the Melvins will be there.
Nice.
Yeah.
That would be
Yes.
fucking rad, dude.
Yes.
We're allowed to swear, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
You got a
Why
Jehovah's
not?
Witness over here. I don't want to
Yeah,
insult
that's
him.
against my religion. And,
Can I take your blood?
Yeah. What are we
And
gonna do with it?
I'm a huge Melvin, like ridiculously big Melvins fan. So swearing and talking about Melvins is highly appreciated around here.
Cool.
Yeah.
Apparently, this is what I'm doing today.
What do you think is gonna ultimately be the end of humanity?
That's a softball question, if there
Yeah.
ever was one. The end of humanity, I think, first you have to define humanity.
So like,
Do you mean the end
people
of...
as they're defined today, like Homo sapiens walking around today, like what is gonna kill people off?
Well, I think people will just evolve.
So we'll avoid some fatal Earth apocalypse because we'll already have been out into the stars.
No, it's not even that, dude. It's like you're already on the cusp of human evolution, right? Like, it's happening now. And, for instance, like, we had the world's first cyborg hate crime was logged by the EU in 2014. That's a real thing. Like, there's a guy...
I need to know more about this.
He was a German dude at a McDonald's, and in Germany, and he had like a robot eye or something, right? Like some really early prototype robot eye, and some guy beat the shit out of him, like in the middle of the McDonald's, because he's like, "Yo, stop filming me with your fucking robot eye," basically. Yeah. So like, you're already seeing transhumanism take place. I think, someone once, I can't remember who, but someone made an interesting comment, which was like, I think part of why there's so much, I suppose, ambiguity around conversations involving genderism is because it's the first time a minority group that is fighting oppression also has just millions, if not billions, of dollars supporting them. That didn't happen for gay rights, dude. Like, if I was gay, like, I lean a little bi, but like I'm not really like, you know, I kissed guys. It was all right, you know. It doesn't bug me, but it's not for me. I kind of wish I was gay, but if I was gay, life would be so much easier. But now,
ain't that the
right?
truth?
Not even 10 years ago, but now. But like, if I was gay, I'd be a little bitter, because it's just like, dude, you had to fight for how long? And every major presidential candidate, really until Trump, ironically enough, was saying, nah, this isn't, your rights are not something I'm willing to even take a chance on, right? Like, I'm not even willing to take a chance on gay marriage if I'm Barack Obama.
They all just kind of...
Right. And, well, this is what happened with every single minority group that's ever sought to increase their stake in the American project, has been that they had to fight for it. Like, it's not like the media immediately just started helping out MLK. It wasn't until there was like a news story that you had to report on, and people saw that popular opinion tended to side with the non-violent people, right? Like, I'm not saying I'm sure he had allies, but like from the get-go, ABC wasn't just showing up and NBC wasn't just showing up with a van saying, let's platform this guy.
How much do you think that technology with the internet and social media had to do with in crowdfunding? Because I mean,
with
nowadays,
this specific,
well, yeah,
instance?
Specifically this, but also would it have been similar for any other instance had the timing been this? You know.
Okay, so I think no, it wouldn't have, because I think there is an ulterior motive, and I think that with anything historically and in the present day, you have to kind of look at incentives. You have to look at, like, there is no altruism. I don't believe in it. I do believe you can, you know, learn compassion for all living things, as, you know, the Buddha may tell you to do, right? But compassion is not the same as altruism, right?
Can you define altruism?
Altruism is doing something completely out of the good of your heart with no selfish motive.
Oh, I don't believe in that either.
Yeah, there is no altruism. It's a long-standing philosophical debate, especially in the West, has been, does it exist, does it not?
No.
Right? Is there true benevolence, or is it that maybe even if you do something nice for someone, it still makes you feel good? You're still getting a positive feedback loop. You're still getting a hormonal rush.
So maybe you could say that, yeah, there is no such thing as altruism, but some things are more altruistic than others.
There's a spectrum of altruism, but
nothing is absolutely altruistic.
That's kind of how I try to view anything that people throw isms on, in any general thing. Is that, or saying an ist, saying a person is an ist of any, you know, an altruist. To say that would be, it's almost saying, just like the term altruism, that it's encompassing your entire life, or everything that you think. You know, so it's like you're saying, you know, things can have a range or have the appearance of that, or a statement can be altruistic. But a person...
Well, I think the only action I can think of that's potentially altruistic is sacrificing your life, literally, for another person, sacrificing an organ. Like, there may be some altruistic actions, but even then, you have a motive for doing this that is not simply just the other person's well-being.
Which makes it not altruistic.
Right.
So even at that extreme...
It gets into a gray area, maybe, you could argue.
Yeah. I see what you're saying. Like, at the extreme end, maybe you could make an argument that this is an altruistic action, but there would still be the motivation behind it that has a seed of not being altruistic.
Like, if you're sacrificing your life for your son, it's because, like, well, what's more important to you? Your son's survival or yours? Your son's survival, but that's still fulfilling something that's important to you.
Your the image of you in your son's mind and everyone else's mind.
Right. Well, you know that this is an extension of you, in a sense.
Right. You got to make that's instinct. You got to make your bloodline keep going no matter what.
Yeah, but I do think, you know, I don't want to say that there's completely no altruism, absolutely, but it's very rare.
Sure.
And it certainly doesn't happen with large corporations ever.
Ever.
Because that's not their
profit.
They have a profit motive.
Yeah.
Well, right now they're trying to...
All businesses are there to make money. That's what a definition of a business is. It's
right.
An entity that makes money.
And so it's like, when you see all these businesses doing what I would call pandering.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Every
have to
business
wonder
is gay
what
on Pride Day.
Yeah, what is the what is the incentive for this? Other than that popular opinion is with it, sure, but why is popular opinion with it when popular opinion wasn't even with it 5 to 7 years ago, right?
Well,
Popular opinion very rarely changes this quickly.
And that's the weird thing about our day and age is, like, the market is based on what people buy.
Mm-hmm.
But what's happening now is we're told what to buy. So they control it on both ends. They tell us what to buy, and then we go out and buy it. So
they've always told us what
They've
to
always
buy.
told you, yeah.
It's
But
just
it's-
now they've got
the bombardment
more,
at this
yeah,
point, though,
now,
is so
well, now
insane
they've
that it's
got,
like...
now it's not, through history it was like, you should buy this because this is the best. You should buy this because this is what the neighbors have. You could buy this because this is the hip new thing. Now it's, you should buy this because you shouldn't buy that.
Yeah.
You should buy this because of all these
Don't
great
buy
things.
a Tesla.
But don't buy one of those because that place they're no good.
Right.
They believe this.
Or
Yeah.
we're on the side of moral superiority.
Well, yeah,
Sure.
ultimately,
we
right?
do things this way, so we're better than all the other companies rather than our quality.
And Josh, that's actually the more common is actually we're above everyone else instead of pointing at someone else and saying don't buy from them.
Right.
It's
We are the
above
greenest.
everyone.
We are the most progressive. And it's like, just because you say it doesn't make it true, for one.
And if you're saying it, then it's probably not.
Right, gourmet.
Yeah.
Right?
Anything,
If you have to tell someone...
Yeah.
anything gourmet does not have gourmet written on the package.
Right. Well, and that's a good point, right? And so, my point in mentioning the billions of dollars supporting transsexuality in response to your question is not to really make any point about the trans thing. It's really to say that I think there is an incentive, and this incentive is transhumanism, right? Whether you think it's right or not, it is undeniable that a lot of people are getting a lot of data right now that they would not be able to get through ethical means unless they enabled people to make these decisions themselves, right? And so the ethical question has actually now become which people, like, what is the qualification for being able to make that decision? And without going into that, the point is like, right now, the qualifications keep dropping, and I think that there's an incentive there that, like, hey, let's find out what would happen here. Because we already know this is where people are going. China has made a baby in a CRISPR machine. Like, that has happened already, right? Do you know about that?
I haven't heard that.
Do you know what CRISPR is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so China did it. The UN admonished them.
When was this?
2 years ago.
Oh, shit.
It was like right before
A few
COVID.
years before.
I knew they were doing some crazy CRISPR shit.
A
I
few
didn't know
years
about
before, I don't know if it was in Europe or maybe even here. They've taken stem cells with basically a 3D printer, on a microscopic level, and built a pig, I believe, liver,
Oh yeah.
and transplanted it, and it worked.
that. Wow.
Yep.
And that's been maybe 10
Transplanted
years
it into a person?
Yeah. No, into
Into a pig.
Yeah.
But you're also cloning animals and then using cloned organs. You're cloning animals and using cloned meat. Although, in my opinion, you're not seeing too much of that yet, probably because it's not cost efficient. But once it becomes cost efficient, they'll do it.
Sure.
And so,
I'd feel
if
better
you
about
ask
it,
me
too.
what is going to cause the end of humanity, it's going to be humans becoming post-humans, right? It's going to be transhumanism, because that will take place in our lifetime. I highly doubt
Do you think
there will be
that's-
any climate disaster in our lifetime.
Do you see that as a problem for humanity?
Yes and no. I think it really depends on how. I think long term, for the species, it had to happen anyways. It has to happen, and it will be.
Kinda
Will be. I don't know if it's really good or bad, but it could be better or worse depending on how we handle
Okay,
it.
fair enough.
Right.
When you describe it, it kind of reminds me of the Greys. They don't seem to have any genitalia. They're all kind of gender neutral, at least when they're described. Any accounts you hear about aliens, they're generally pretty, what's the word, like androgynous and
Well, and-
machine-like.
Not to go there, but what's funny is if you look at especially in like Eastern religion, they have these sort of realms. There's like in Buddhism, there's the realm of forms, and then there's the formless realm, and then there's like the ultimate realm of where perception ceases to even exist. And as you go up into these realms, the beings that exist within them do become gender neutral, which is kind of interesting. And
like in Hinduism.
right,
It's like the
right,
Gabbalion,
but you
too.
see this also in some African mythology too. Like they have these gender neutral gods, and I don't really believe in or gods that have two genders. I don't really believe in like the ancient aliens theory, but if you did, that would be, frankly, an interesting piece of evidence, right? Like, because maybe that is the future. Maybe asexual reproduction is more efficient than sexual reproduction at a certain point. You know what I
get
mean?
to the point of cloning, then you're gonna say, well, I feel like that I've built myself genetically to be superior, and I can't cross with any other partner because it's gonna infuriate my
Well, if you can
genetics,
grow a baby in
so
a
I need
tube,
to just clone myself.
if you can grow a baby in a tube, that is definitely preferable to the way we do it now. Let's say
Why?
Let's more efficient. Let's say
It's more efficient, maybe, if it depending, not necessarily cost efficient.
I don't know.
efficient on the mother and what she's able to do.
It's definitely healthier for the mother,
because you're
although I
taking an
think
entire
you're
person out of the workplace for a while in most jobs.
yeah, but you're also robbing that person of the experience they were literally born to fulfill.
Sorry, I'm
you know?
speaking just on efficiency.
Well, and also with efficiency.
But what kind of efficiency?
Yeah, because
Oh, fair. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I guess on output of, well, you could have more babies.
well, you could, but you'd still have to
That's
set
true.
up a big cloning chamber.
Fair enough.
I can go have a gaggle of kids in the middle of the woods.
Hmm.
It's not gonna be the cleanest thing, but that's what we were doing from the
Could do it,
get-go.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, and so this is the thing though. With the transhumanism topic, it's weird to me that no one's talking about it because it and AI are very related topics, right? Like, what will spur transhumanism will be three things. It'll be genetic and biological research. Let's lump those together. AI and cyberkinetics, right? Because AI plus neural net plus the ability to customize your baby means you're making a superhero, right?
Cyberkinetics. Sorry, that'd be like
merging,
cyborgs, okay.
yeah, machinery with the biological.
I gotcha. Okay.
And
You ever read much William Gibson?
Necromancer, bro.
Yeah.
What about Neil Stephenson?
Hmm.
You ever read Snow Crash? You would like Snow Crash if you like William Gibson. But yeah, dude, that's Gibson. I've only read Necromancer in high school, so I'm not a huge Gibson person. But Gibson, Philip K. Dick. I read some Asimov, although I was more into the Foundation things than the robot stuff. But just these people saw. I don't think it's that hard, frankly, to look at today if you have any understanding of history and science. To say, oh, this is where that's going, right? Which is what they did. It's what Jules Verne did.
It's what George Orwell did.
It's what Aldous Huxley did.
Yeah.
Right, and
Gibson actually talks about where they all missed. There's a lot of interesting interviews with him
where he was
himself.
wrong in
Where not
his
necessarily
predictions.
wrong. He's talking about like cell phones. He goes, they had to crack up because none of us, but the same idea is that
Star Trek had cell phones though.
right. But he's talking about in Sprawl and
Gotcha.
because Neuromancer is part 1 of 3, and
Neuromancer, not Necromancer. You're right. Yeah.
and it's based in what's called Sprawl, and it's his version of the world that he saw coming. But you don't see.
I mean, I lived in Sprawl,
The
dude.
technology idea and what goes on in there is you would have to go so far beyond the point of an oligarchy where phones got shut down.
Yeah.
It got that grip to where it was like, okay, y'all can't communicate like that anymore. Y'all can't just get online anymore.
Right.
Right.
That'll be a thing. When they're
it's happening now.
They're like, oh shit. Well, yeah, with social media, they're like, oh wait, we don't actually want you to have that.
I mean,
Well, it's not even just social
happens,
media.
It happens in other countries. China is very strict. Even their version of Minecraft.
Really?
Yeah, you can. It restricts people. It restricts kids to like 3 hours a week.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Well, so think about
What?
Yeah, it's a crazy, completely it's not completely different version.
I mean,
but it's like
here's the thing,
all
that
online.
specific
all
policy
very,
will probably be
yeah.
good for them though.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things where it's like,
Get the fuck outside.
I don't think that's a bad thing, but it's a bad thing for the government.
They
to be
can't go
telling you
outside.
No, I agree with that.
that,
But they live in China. They can't go outside.
Well, okay.
So what else are they gonna do?
Yeah, that's right. Use your abacus then.
Use abacus. Yeah, I mean, but you can't go outside or we'll shoot you. You can only play Minecraft for 3 hours. They're trying to develop scientists, is what they're doing. Kids get so bored.
No, they're trying to win, right? And,
yes.
Like people, the issue with I think, a lot of people in the age of the internet, is that for the most, and who knows if this is true of us. You decide, Alice. But like, everyone gets all this information now that they didn't used to get. It used to be, before telecommunications, news took months to spread by word of fucking mouth, unless you got a newspaper, which still took weeks for you to get the information. And then this has been speeding up, what is it, Moore's Law, right? We're on this exponential curve, but where we're at now, and where we'll eventually be, by the way, this is what the future of neural nets is, and this is why humanity will end this way, is we're going to eventually be an actual active hive mind. You will be able to see,
I believe
in
that's true.
theory, everything that everyone else sees. The issue will be who is controlling you.
Well, I think the other issue is...
Are you controlling you, or is Bill Gates?
Well, I mean, like you said, it's a hive mind, so the hive mind controls it. It's a true hive mind.
A hive mind, there's a queen.
There's still a queen.
The queen tells the workers what to do.
So it would have to... So that's interesting.
Essentially.
So what you're saying, it would actually have to be someone
don't really
specifically
understand it.
removed from it. You cannot be in it and also be the
What,
queen of it.
but the idea of a real hive
You would have to
mind
be
is
disconnected from it,
that
right?
From
But you're just above it.
from your
If you're rich, are you disconnected from
So
society?
they
or are
have
you
a
just
special kind of
above
Neuralink
society?
with a one-way feed, where it feeds information one way.
the
feeds
idea
orders,
is that there's
but it
no,
doesn't receive this coming back like that.
well, what it is in general is if you're not even thinking about anything other than your task. Your purpose is your purpose.
Well, that's if you're an insect, right?
How
And
is
that's-
Bill
and
Gates
that-
going to
I think it's likely though that
And-
you're sending it essentially haptic and visual and audio feedback. You're a sensor,
But how is Bill Gates going to interact?
and your
with this thing?
emotions are part of the sensing, though, because
That's-
emotions are useful. This makes me feel this way. Like you'll still probably feel
It's all sense data.
on some
Yeah.
level like you are an individual. Like I don't think a bee is a zombie.
I don't understand how you steer the hive mind though.
You
different
have
things do
intent.
it.
That's all you do. You just have intent.
That's
But so
what I'm
you're a
saying.
part of the hive mind.
Right.
He's
You are
in it.
But
You
you're
are-
sending
Who's-
intent.
Okay, so the queen. How is the queen steering it? Like how? Sending out intention. You said. How does that?
So in bugs, I couldn't tell you the actual science. I used to be able to.
With bees, it has to do with dancing and then pheromoning. Most of them
Pheromones,
do
right.
with pheromones.
That's right. Yep.
Ants, it has to do with trail, but they all are genetically mapped to know this is what I do.
See,
Right.
here's where I'm kind of disagreeing.
You know.
I think you connect to this thing. You're in it now.
I'm not
You're part
saying
of it.
that what you
It's-
say is not possible. This is why I said, is it this even thing where everyone is just connected, like almost like a technological enablement of true empathy, right? Or, so is it this utopian thing, or is it this horrible dystopian thing where you're a drone and you're genetically engineered to do what you do? Which will be what happens. They will make some very big, mean, nasty motherfuckers as soldiers.
Think about this. We made
Some very
dogs.
wide-hipped women as birthers.
We made dogs and cattle from domesticating. We genetically altered these things just through domestication.
You guys know the board.
especially post Mendel,
and I think
right? Like
we-
all the
right.
German dog breeds
right.
are invented
I'm
late
saying is,
1800s. It's like all
what's
post-
to say that we haven't done that to ourselves? My whole idea is that we've done that to ourselves. We genetically alter ourselves
That's
with
what
our own
no, that's what we
domestication.
are already doing.
Right, and it's like you're
And are
saying,
going to
that
do
will
with more
eventually-
agency.
right. And that's what I'm saying. It will start to happen. It won't even necessarily have to be forced on you medically or scientifically necessarily in that
Oh
level.
no, I mean
it's
not to us.
if it's fed onto you, it becomes, and that's what I think the hive mind does. Is it all of these things? Take the cell phone. that's almost a hive mind thing. Everybody.
It's the start of it already.
Here's what I'm saying. You guys know the Borg. You guys are Trekkies, right?
I'm not Trekkie, but I know the Berg.
I know the original Star Treks.
Well,
I'm a Trekker,
but I know.
Okay, who controls the Borg? The Borg.
The Borg was
Queen.
Was that the big cube that floated? And
okay,
it was
so
like
you gave a great example of the cell phone.
Right.
So
the Borg
you can
Queen,
control
though.
people. You can control all the ants through your cell phone.
Right.
By sending out the signal of here's today's news.
Right.
My point is though,
there are people who already think that's what they're doing.
In order to interact with that system, you are a part of it. You are a part of this machine.
Right.
I'm not. Who's saying that they aren't?
Right.
So I guess you don't control it. The thing operates itself. It's bigger than one.
It goes back to what you're saying. It's intent. You have the intent. For some reason, you're driven.
So there is. That. My point is, there is no Archon steering it. It's a lot of different voices.
I don't think we can really fathom it as individually minded agents, right?
Okay.
And that is the horror of it, because we've been spending our entire existence since literally even before we were humans trying to figure out what the hell we are. We still haven't really exactly answered that question for ourselves, right? Like, no one has said, like, we haven't done the math and found that the meaning of life is 62 or whatever the fucking joke was from Hitchhiker's Guide, 42. 69, man. And, like, all of a sudden we're going to be in control, right? Like, it's a very... So, frankly, what it is it's just an existential horror, right? It's kind of like Lovecraftian, right?
Oh, yeah.
You're approaching the complete unknown, and you know that there are two ways this can go, and one is more likely than the other. Yeah. And the more likely way is that the worst people on Earth, not necessarily the worst, but most of the worst, definitely the richest, will be in total control of this technology that allows them to make their kids way smarter and faster than you.
We were talking about that the other night when I was talking about Star Trek, bringing that back up. The original Khan, what he came from was that original.
Yes.
It was the original. He was one of this, what was it, 5 or 6?
I don't remember the specific.
And there's 5 or 6
I've just seen
of these superhumans that at some point on the Earth, they had developed them and they started running shit. And they had gotten so mad with power that they had pretty much somehow encased them in, cryogenic sleep and shot them into space.
Have you ever read...
And the Enterprise accidentally runs across them and wakes them up. And then that's in an episode, and then that's what the very first Star Trek movie is the Khan, the Wrath of Khan. And that's what it all is.
Have you ever read Dan Simmons? He did Hyperion.
I've heard of Hyperion.
Hyperion's amazing. It's like the best science fiction book I've ever read. And actually Fall of Hyperion is the best, because that's when it just boom. First one is Canterbury Tales in Space. It's all very literary. It's like William Gibson written by a professor of literature.
Oh,
right. But it's awesome. It's like, so John Keats is a character in the sequel, right? Like, but it's literally like a replicant version of John Keats that they somehow made, right? And the villain, it's not even a villain, it's this just time-traveling god from the future that just kills just everything it touches and puts it on this tree of pain. It's called the Shrike, right? Yeah, so there's a ton of literary references throughout it. But in that, why the fuck did we bring this up? Christ, what were we just talking about? We were talking about Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, the superhumans, the people on Earth.
Oh, Master
right.
Race
So he wrote this book
the
called...
elites are creating.
He wrote this honestly, probably the other best science fiction. He's my favorite contemporary writer, probably, to be honest, because his prose is excellent. Like, you see it. Like, I've had to reread passages because I actually missed the prose. I just saw what happened, and there are very few writers who can do that. But in my opinion, he has these two books called Ilium and Olympus, and the basic plot is that there are these people on Earth, and there's always 1 million people on Earth or something like that. There's like some arbitrary number of people that there always are, and you live to be 100 and then you die. Oh. And every 20 years, you get refurbished in the ring around the Earth. There's like this like ring now around the Earth that was built by the post-humans who left, right? And you go up and these robots make you like 20 again. So the oldest you ever look is 40, right?
Huh.
And this one guy has become the first human to learn how to read because he's 99. And he was like, fuck, I'm going to die. And so he learns how to read, and no one's learned to read in like a millennium, right? This is like a super far future sort of book. Then there's this other side story about this professor, Thomas Hockenberry, who was a professor of Homeric literature in the 60s at Indiana University. And he gets resurrected in the past by the Greek gods to basically watch the Iliad happen and like write down exactly what happened so that Homer can write it later.
Oh shit! That's what is that called? That's
Ilium,
dope.
like the plains of Ilium. Yeah. And so then there's a third story which is about these two robots, AIs that they don't even remember how long, or maybe they do, but have just been hanging out in the moons of Jupiter, studying Proust and like Shakespeare. Each has a dedicated writer to analyze while it just like does these missions around Jupiter. It's kind of weird. And they end up like finding out that like there's news that Mars has been terraformed. I don't want to ruin the whole book, but for the sake of the point, they show up to Mars and it turns out the post-humans have left Earth and fashioned themselves, because they're narcissistic egomaniacs, right? Because let's be real, bipolar people and people with these sorts of personality disorders are the exact sort of people who are driven to find power, right? And so they are the people who will get this skill first. And so they become, they decide that they are the Greek gods now, right? And they are just replaying history for fun, for their own amusement. They're recreating history on Mars, and they've left like what they think is a nice world down on Earth. And essentially then there's this interdimensional monster named Cetabos who is being pursued by a spirit of Anyway, this thing is gonna. It's like that. What's that Stephen King book where there's these things that like they eat reality?
No,
it's basically this universe-eating thing, right? This Galag. What's the guy from fucking Marvel who eats universes? Galactus. This like Galactus thing, right, is coming to basically eat the Earth, right? And so these humans who have like learned how to read, they have to figure it out, and then they meet Odysseus, and it turns out that what's happened, and it's all very nonlinear, but is that the robots go to Mars, they inform the guy from the 60s that the gods are not actually gods, and then he gets the Trojans and the Greeks to unite against the gods, and there's like this war between the humans and the gods. And I think it's a really good book in large part because he's essentially done what the great sci-fi writers do and said, all right, this is where that one's going. I mean, H.G. Wells could see that's where it was going, right? This is the Eloy Morlocks duality, right? You've read The Time Machine?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got these... So in The Time Machine, you've got these hairy ape monsters that live beneath the Earth and have very advanced machinery. And they basically prey upon the dumb sheep-like humans who are all very pretty and hairless, but like dumb as fucking rocks, right? And this guy, he goes to the far future, and humanity is split into two species. And this is written in, what, the early 1900s?
Yeah, that's a classic. I think I got it over there on the shelf.
So like, if you think of, like, people could see that this has been going on since, I mean, eugenics was invented in the 1800s, right? Since we knew about hereditary traits, humanity's been on this path. And I always thought, when I was a part of the Occupy Wall Street movement, that the whole 99%, 1%, it's not really a farce, it's a fallacy, in that it's not about them wanting to be rich. No one needs to be that rich, right? It's a power game. They need other people to not be that rich.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they know AI is coming. They know this. Like Kurzweil says, what, the singularity is coming, what, 2030, 2040? I forget.
Yeah, I think it's...
Holy shit.
But he's been saying that since 2007, right? So since 2007, which is, by the way, around the time of the crash, I'm not connecting any dots, I just noticed that. might have actually been 2006 he was saying it, but there are people who they live their life. I've met them in Hollywood. They eat all these supplements because they're trying to meet the singularity, like the Kurzweil believers, right? There are people who, even if they're not fanatical Kurzweil people, they can see what's coming.
What do you mean meet the singularity?
So the singularity is when AI transcends human intelligence.
Sure, but they're taking supplements to help them reach that point?
Yeah, that's what Kurzweil's doing too. He's like,
what
old
is
as
that?
fuck.
What does that mean?
Like, and
how
you know, like
get them closer?
NMN,
like brain, like okay, like
things that help you live longer.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, so
Yeah,
they'll be around long
vitamins.
enough.
Yeah.
So they'll be around for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think DMT aliens are?
Hard shift. I don't believe that I've met a DMT alien, so I couldn't tell you.
Oh,
I've
you know what?
seen-
You told me that.
I've seen
Yeah.
what you could describe as the machine elves. Like I understand that these are what are seen
DMT
as the-
entity. You just anything you come across. Like, sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. But what do you make of that? What do you think that is? The machine elves.
I don't exactly know.
Well, me either.
That's actually like a really I you know that I can I can definitely talk about some DMT. That's like a hard question because I don't really think that question is I think that question is the answer to that is a tangential answer to the more important question, which is why is it that everyone who does DMT sees the same things?
Because
that's the more important question.
Well, that would be evidence that they exist.
It would be some evidence that something exists.
Yeah.
But
that they're interacting with the same thing.
They may not be separate from your own mind.
Yeah, I agree.
Right? So it could also just be evidence that there's a hardwired, into your lizard brain part of your mind.
They call DNA memory.
DNA. Well, it could be that. It could be just the way that your brain is structured, right? And it could be just that, like, your prefrontal cortex is currently talking to your frontal cortex, right? And then, meanwhile, your fucking amygdala is going nuts, and so you're having these weird pressure changes in your ears that make it sound like there's earthquakes, right? And so, I mean, here's what I'll say is part of why I spend almost no time thinking about what DMT aliens are, because the only time that I did DMT where I had a voice in my head that was not my own, right? It's only happened once in my life ever that there was a voice in my head that was not my voice. Clearly, like you can tell. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And whenever I would question, because I'm ADD AF, right? Like I'm just gonna start. I wonder. While this thing is talking to me. So here, I'll just kind of tell you the story. I guess that'll make a little more sense. I really hate doing DMT with other people a lot of the time because a lot of people think it's cool to talk or forget to pass the fucking joint. And either way, you're just like, yo, man, like, the best way to do it is play baseball, right? You know baseball, like the joint passing game? Where you hold it in and then you pass it around in a circle and you can't exhale until it comes back to you.
Oh.
Right? So you always constantly, this is apparently, by the way.
That, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Apparently some tribes that smoked it, I forget which, because this is totally just secondhand information from a friend, who had me do this. He said that some tribes in like South America or some shit, and basically they have their own version of baseball like that for DMT. And the whole point, the reason you have to hold your breath is you want it just constantly in your lungs for as long as possible.
Yeah.
Right? You want constant exposure to it. This is why the ancient Judean priests in the Second Temple era would
It was
hotbox a dome.
Levites.
The Levites, yes.
Yeah.
They would. Oh, you're right. They were in Judea though. That's what I meant. But you're right. They are the Levites. So they would hotbox a dome, right? Probably made out of just cow skin or some shit, but it had no chimney, right? And they'd sit in a circle, and then you're just in a chamber of it. You can't not breathe it. Mm-hmm. So we did that, and then everyone, some people are just like chattering about the bullshit they're seeing, and it's just, and that annoys the shit out of me because I'm trying to like.
It's got to be with specific people, or not with anyone at all.
I mean, these are people who I love tripping on other stuff with, but for some reason, some people see DMT as a much more, I think, chill vibe.
Recreational.
Yeah, it's not a recreational thing. Yeah, that's the word.
No, man, I'm right there with you. I have a friend, and I'm very much like this too, but I have a friend who's even more like this. Like he has a lot of like sanctity and formality around it, and like he gets really mad at people when they're not showing it the proper respect. And like
I guess that's me. I wouldn't say I have time for anger. Although I have been annoyed when people don't pass the fucking joint. That does annoy me.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, dude, this isn't weed. Like weed, I don't really care because weed is plentiful and available. Especially
if you're passing deems around like that, you're trying to get to a point.
Get in and out, and then say whatever bullshit you want to say about your ass. So, or whatever bullshit. But so I just walked outside. And it was actually, I think, the first time I'd really, like, been alone. We were in Big Bear on DMT. And so I just, like, went and looked up at the stars and closed my eyes. And, like, I was kind of getting this interesting, like, black and white slideshow. And I started hearing, like, this kind of, like, collage of sounds, which was pretty cool. And I realized, like, all these sounds were sounds I'd heard before, though, just kind of, like, remixed. And so that was kind of interesting. And then suddenly this voice, it's not my own, but it sounded like the voice of like many in one. I swear, it's just like it was one voice, but it sounded like there were many. Yeah. It just said my name, and then it just said like, "We've been waiting for you." And I'm like, oh, shit. That's not. I mean, that's not exactly not what you want to hear. But you're like, oh, that
unsettling.
That's pretty unsettling, exactly. And so like. And then it just gives me this, I won't go into what it said, but, because I think that's more personal. But it did, whenever I would question in between statements, I would, just my brain would just wander out. I can't help it. Like, it's just a random, just like, am I talking to like my prefrontal cortex right now? Like, what? Is there a different agency in my brain that I'm speaking with? Is this aliens from the stars? Like, is it because I'm outside? Like, you're just kind of I don't really, once again.
I know what you're saying. You're thinking in between
you start to rationalize.
Almost. Yeah.
And just question because, you're doing it because you're curious, right? So it's like, it's not with malice to question. But whenever I would, it would make, the inner eardrum shake.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know exactly.
Right, where it rumbles your ears.
For me, it's like a high-pitched drone, but I know what you're saying.
Well,
it's so loud that it rumbles your. Oh.
No, I
guess I get them both at the same time.
It's like when your ears pop, the feeling of your ear popping. Now imagine that like pop, 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 like it's popping back and forth.
Oh, now it's different. Okay.
Have you ever had that? I know other people who've had it, but I don't know how common it is. I guess
I didn't ever get the explosions.
Well, it's just like
yeah,
it's like a rumble. It's not
some
really
people experience it as a popping, like firecrackering. I never had it that heavily, but usually there was sound. There was something playing, usually like some kind of beat music.
It has to be silent. I found, yeah.
Well, see, and that was the thing is I didn't necessarily have the option.
Right, yeah.
And that's one of the things is I'm very, very particular about doing things. I usually don't do anything with anybody around because of just like you're saying, I can't be bothered to be bothered with somebody else being bothered to be bothered. You know?
Well, also, dude, the thing is, like, the only times I've had actual experiences on DMT that really were enlightening were when it was silent. And the other times I've done, and I didn't notice this till I'd had the pattern emerge, but whenever the music's playing, I get cool, like, hey, things look cool, music sounds cool, but you're not really, it's not like acid or shrooms where you can actually kind of learn something from music. It's like DMT is not for art, in my opinion.
Right.
It's for you to do some transcendental meditation,
Yeah, absolutely.
And
I couldn't agree more. It's not, you're not trying to observe something or watch a movie or watch a piece of art.
Yeah.
Or something.
Do acid if you want to do that. Right?
I can't even do that with fungus, but I mean, when I do fungus, I try to take it to such a limit.
Well, so we should talk about fungus in a sec, but so to wrap this point up, because I know I'm
you're
high
good,
and
man.
rambling, I'm sure.
That's
But,
what we
like,
do here.
That's what we do.
Hey, basically, whenever I would question it, it would like sound like the ground was shaking, but you could feel that it was your ears popping, and it would just say like silence, like angrily. It would say silence, like, and essentially the message got through like, yo, idiot, you're only going to hear this once, so
Mm.
you might as well shut up and pay attention, and you can ask questions for the rest of your life.
Right.
But right now, this is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like doing my best, and it just kind of like ran through some shit with me, and essentially the only really final relevant point is it told me what I had to do in order to talk to it again. And I haven't smoked DMT since because I'm not confident that one of the things was to conquer my ADD, right? And the other one is just basically improve your relationship with your family. So I'm very comfortable sharing those two things because those are two very positive instructions. And it's like, do that, you can talk to me again. So once I feel like I've made sufficient progress, or really the only other time I'll do it is I will spirit guide people. And I think probably that's the best way to do it, because then you know that you're not arrogantly asserting that you've completed the task. It's going to let you know while you were doing someone else a favor.
Oh.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of...
You'll get your little dip your toes in just to see.
It has to be a communal thing. I may go by myself, but like, I thought for a while what I would do is like knock those problems out, and then I'll just sit there by myself and smoke this, and it's like, I don't know if I'll ever be confident enough, right? Because I was never confident enough that whatever this thing is, right? I was never confident that I would speak to it, or that it would be waiting for me, like whatever the fuck that means, right? Like, and I only think that that's of interest because there's an interview with like an ayahuasca shaman from like the 70s or something, and one of the things he says is that it's this legend actually about ayahuasca, which is that like their creator god, whoever, like God basically...
Oh, wasn't their name ayahuasca?
No, I don't think so. I forget. It just said God in the thing, but I think that's just a shorthand. That's the only, I only really ever use the word God as a shorthand when talking about DMT, because I think it's like, it's obviously not a guy with a beard you're talking to.
We have
right?
big questions, and God is a nice little, just put this here for now until he figures other shit out.
Placeholder.
Well, and if you look into like the actual philosophy of like the cosmology of God, of Western culture, like, it's not actually inaccurate, right? Depending on how anthropologically
the way
you
the
look
Torah
at
is
it.
describing Yahweh is not as a man in the clouds. It's Yahweh. The Tetragrammaton is fire, earth, wind, and air, and then you add spirit to it, and you get Yeshua. The Torah is literally just an explanation of the universe. It's saying these are the components that make up everything. And it's, like you're saying, it's not a man in the clouds. And I can't really think of a lot of religions that is more than a metaphor, or if it is a literal entity, it's on some kind of transcendental fifth dimension shit that we don't really.
Right.
It's outside.
Well, you know,
our
the
grasp.
stories of the Bible are just like not true for the most part, or until you get to the point where it's literally just a historical record of your people, right?
I think we're looking at around like
King David
after Solomon's temple. Yeah. It's
No,
like,
I think before Solomon's temple, like it's pretty obvious that David and Solomon wrote a lot of the Bible.
Oh, so you think Solomon
Or
and
had
David
people
were real
write.
people?
We know they were real. That's
Okay.
verifiable information.
Okay, I usually date the like, which we don't have to get into this.
I think
too
it's
deep, but-
David's bloodline that they say that Haile Selassie was proven to come from.
Who?
Haile Selassie, Rastafari.
That's also the line of Jesus
interesting.
is King David.
Well, I mean, that's interesting. Is that why they have the Davidian priests?
That was part of not only the Abrahamic covenant, but of a covenant David had.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Was that the seed of Abraham would be what the Messiah came through.
Yeah, that's bullshit though, right? Like you know
It's a
that.
lot of
Like
bullshit.
that's a huge fucking load of bullshit. And you know how they say history's written by the victors, right? Okay.
That's literally true in the Israelites' case.
Well, yeah, the walls of Jericho, they just fell. Right?
You're right.
They just fell, dude. We didn't do anything.
Bro.
Just blew our trumpets.
Yeah.
What you gonna do?
And you know
But,
it's
like-
bad if they're like dash the infant's head against a stone when talking about the Canaanites.
Yeah.
It's like, so what do they do? They're like, what are you guys afraid to talk about? Because this is what you're not afraid to talk about.
Right. Like,
Well, so-
them.
Anyway, go ahead.
Well, no. The thing about David though is, and this is a point I love. It's a very relevant point in so many ways, right? If you read the actual story, let's say, right, in the Bible, this guy has a pretty remarkable life. He's, as a child, picked out by God to be given the strength to kill a giant with a rock, which is just like, all right, yeah, faux show. And then he's brought into the king's house for being so brave and strong and awesome. And he's the king's favorite, even more than the king's own sons. But then God makes Saul go fucking crazy. So, like, out of fucking nowhere, Saul tried to kill David. Like, I mean, what was David going to do other than kill Saul? Like, I can't, the guy's trying to kill me. I just have to kill the king and then kill all of his sons and take the throne. Like, what are you going to do in that situation? The guy went nuts.
His hands were tied. He had to.
Right. It's like, okay, so you're justifying a coup in the Bible, right? And then he bangs the hottest girl in the land,
Yeah, Bathsheba.
and he gives himself some other moral failing so you don't notice the coup part.
Isn't that part funny too? It's like he's like she's married and he has her
Right, well-
husband.
And maybe he really did do that, but I can tell you when he's writing his own history of his life, he, for one, after he goes like, yeah, I wrote that psalm, and all of them, actually, I wrote those, not you 12 people, right? Like,
all of them.
he's like, I'm a
Mine,
rock star poet, warrior king who bangs the hottest girl ever. And
I also
and
killed a giant,
my-
a lion, and a
I
bear.
have the Messiah's DNA in my balls. Like,
He's
it's-
not around yet, but you'll see.
It's such a just throw your balls on the table sort of move to,
Yeah.
to claim that you were told
Fair
that.
enough.
And then his son also bangs the hottest chick in the land, right? Who's the Queen of Sheba. I don't know what the Bathsheba, Queen of Sheba linguistic relationship is. I'm sure there is one, knowing the way that the Torah works. But, and he's the wisest dude ever and the richest dude ever. It's like, okay. And by the way, if you look at it historically, the years in which they ruled are the years of the Judean empire's like apex, right? In terms of territorial expansion and regional power, right?
So if you had some scribes in there, like, and then you murdered Saul and all his kids. No. I had to. You kill that guy and rewrite it.
Yeah, wait. Who hired this scribe?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, right. He definitely just said to the guy, "Here's what you're gonna write.
Yeah.
Make it sound pretty."
Yeah.
Right. And
dictated, not read.
I would guess that it was written by Solomon because he's the wise one, and he's like probably
King propaganda.
yeah, exactly. But like, And what's really interesting, and where you can kind of see how this is probably one of the best examples of the dichotomy between the spiritual side of religion, which is pretty necessary and useful and unifying, and the institutional side of religion, which is, frankly, since it's unifying, how can we use this for power, right, and for our own gain, is the Queen of Sheba goes and she's like, you're not really the richest, wisest guy ever, are you? And she goes and she bangs Solomon, right? And if you go, if you ever go to Little Ethiopia in LA, really fun part of town, some great restaurants, you'll just look and you'll be like, huh, boy, does this language look like some fucking Hebrew shit, right? Like it's clearly a Semitic language, right? And it turns out that there's I can't remember what it's called anymore. There's a book. I used to know what it was called. It's the Ethiopian Bible, and it basically tells most of the Old Testament in slightly different language, but it also says that the Queen of Sheba banged Solomon, carried his son, came back, and brought the word of God with her. It's like, okay, so she saw, oh, you really got a good setup here. These people are doing exactly what you want them to do. I think that should be going down here in Ethiopia, right? And so you bring this power structure to Ethiopia, and this language and all this shared culture, and of course that will be then the root of many conspiracy theories.
Yep.
But
like thousands of years.
And that's exactly where they say the bloodline of Haile Selassie, who was the first king of Ethiopia that freed them. And biblically it said,
honestly, it's possible.
And they say that he's, well, I mean, I'm just going by what I know about Rastafarians.
Right.
You know,
but that's possible,
and their
right?
belief
Like, is that not
is that
possible?
Haile Selassie
It's also possible
actually bore the stigmata, and that's why he called himself Rastafari. And he was, you know, according biblically, Jesus will come back and free everybody. And if you look at the text, historically speaking, not like a Messiah from the sky to free the world, then technically that's what he did. That's why they look at him as...
Oh, they think he is the Messiah.
He's the Messiah.
And supposedly he is also through the line of David.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they were. That's why Rastafarianism
Isn't it convenient
is
that the Messiah's already happened?
It's kind of like a
It is.
belief.
It is very convenient.
It's very similar
No,
to
but he'll
how
come back, dude.
Orthodox Buddhism came
They wouldn't
out
like
of-
that because then they wouldn't have anything to complain about.
No, Christians would love for the Messiah to come back.
But then after that, what are they going to do?
Be in heaven, bro. You're fine. You raptured.
Yeah, you get raptured. Everybody gets
That's
sucked
not.
into
They
the
wouldn't like
sky.
that. That's boring. Plus, there's like, other people there with
Well-
different ideas.
So, dude, here's the thing: is
No, it's
like
a hive mind.
Oh, right. Bring it full circle.
the yeah, Jesus, that threw me off. The thing about the Bible though is that you can tell, okay, that stuff is somewhat real, right? Like these are real people. Maybe their stories are embellished, right? But we can verify that like someone's at least propagandizing about a real person, right? At the very least. What you can't prove, and just no one has ever been able to prove, is that Moses ever existed, right? There's like certain theories of stories that may have apocryphally been passed down through the oral tradition in Canaan well before Judaism, or I guess the Israelites made their covenant with God more accurately, right?
Yeah.
Now you talk about how,
But
there's proof that Egypt has no record of having ever
Any
had
Jews.
slaves, any Jews, slaves.
no, they had
to build
slaves,
a-
but they didn't have Jews.
yeah, but they didn't. Well, yeah, but they didn't, and also that's not. They didn't have slaves building their pyramids and stuff like that. No, it took,
Well, no, I think they did, but they were just
Okay.
very well treated slaves,
Right.
right? You're put
Very
in
well
this.
educated slaves.
I mean,
No, that's-
well,
that guy's not
Well,
a
it was
slave.
also a.
But the guy
well,
dragging
it was
the
also a
stone.
monarch.
Okay,
It was also
I
a
hear you.
monarchy.
So the guy shaping
So it
the stone,
wasn't-
maybe not, but the guy carrying it.
Right. But at the same time, they might not have thought of themselves as slaves because it was a monarchy. So it might not necessarily been slave as we think a
Right.
slave. It's just, it's like, this is life, kid. We're born
This
into
is
this.
your
and
place in
this
the
is what we
system.
do.
Right. Well, and it's certainly not on the level of like the Great Wall of China where you just have just like clearly you're disposable.
Yeah.
Like they do know that like
yeah, there's bodies all in that thing.
right. But they found like with the pyramids like this is like a village where the slaves lived and it was like considered very nice for the time. But it's like I think the reward for your heavenly duty that you served is you get a nice house. But you're still basically probably getting told what to do.
Yeah.
You're essentially a slave. Either way, there's no proof that they ever took any Jews as slaves, right? There's really no proof. I don't even know if there's really proof of Joseph. I think there is some proof that there was a Jewish consultant of some kind.
Do you think there's sufficient evidence that there was Jesus? Like, obviously, there's a person being written about, but this person that's being written about is being written about in similar way, like a similar story is being written in several places at different times. Almost like a very, very similar story.
I think that there was probably a guy named Jesus Christ who, as Jung would say, acted out the ideal moral role so well that people that he was able to be bastardized into a Messiah figure. I don't know if bastardized.
You know what? Maybe that's what interesting.
Because
I like the way you said that.
Well,
I like the way you said that because
that's what he was.
What else is a Messiah besides that? That's a good way of.
Well, here's the thing. He is about 500 years. His lifetime is 500 years after the life of the Buddha, but the Buddha's stories really start proliferating en masse. Much closer, like a couple hundred years later, I think. Like I don't think that. Don't quote me, but point is like on an evolutionary level, considering the separation of the East and West, just geologically, right? They really have no contact with each other. The Buddha and Jesus fill basically the same role, right? Which is, hey, life doesn't have to be all suffering, actually. Turns out, right? Like, people talk about how cruel the God of the Old Testament is. It's like, well, maybe life is just completely cruel.
And that's what it's trying to tell you.
And God is reality to them, right?
It's a metaphor for the reality. They're saying, look,
well,
you don't
I think
have
they
to like
believed
this
that
guy,
there was a
but
God.
he's there.
I think that they believed that there was a being who the priests could talk to. Absolutely. But I think...
Yes, but yeah, the
I
way
think
they
they
looked at it
mistook
wasn't
that.
a man in the clouds. They're speaking to the universe, It's like they're the thing that is...
Well, that's how kings were able to convince people to dedicate their lives beyond the life. It's like, the worst I can do is kill you.
That's like a
but now I've got this thing to where once you die, you still got to worry about some shit. So the worst thing I can do isn't kill you. The worst thing I can do is kill you and tell the dude that I know I'm cool with him.
This jam was made famous by the Catholics.
Well, and so there's the thing. So the Catholic Church, dude, is evil. I don't think every Catholic is evil. I think the institution itself and its foundation,
of course,
was
an
inherent act of evil if you consider to be evil acts that are suppressive of individual freedom.
Well, I don't look. I feel the same way about radical jihadists. They are victims of a system. In most of the cases, that's all they've ever known, and they think they're going to get eternal paradise for what they're doing.
Yeah, but okay, so the more accurate comparison would be Muhammad to Constantine, right? Who is the person who established the system they've only ever known, right? And why? And I always say that Muhammad is he's the Joseph Smith of his time, right? Like, or Joseph Smith is just a wannabe Muhammad, more accurately, right? Because it's the same fucking story, which is like, hey, so there was literally nobody around while I was traveling, and while I was by myself, the angel Gabriel just came and told me that I'm in charge, so you should just come. Let's take that place.
How is that
that'll be our home.
different from Judaism or Christianity?
Because
Because there's multiple myths.
How's what different?
Well, I suppose how is are you saying that Mormonism and like Scientology and Islam are less credible somehow than the Torah, or less credible than?
Oh, it's provably less credible.
Not the book, but the religions around this book.
Well, you can prove the falsehoods of the Quran historically more easily because it happened later.
And we
right?
can do a lot of that with scripture too, right?
No, but later scripture, you can see that there's some scripture, what Luther called the Apocrypha, right? And he did the amazing, diligent work of figuring that shit out. Some of that shit was written hundreds upon hundreds of years after it was said to have been written, right? And the Catholic Church just threw it in there. So yeah, you can prove that shit's wrong in the exact same way. You can prove that, like, oh yeah, totally, he's a descendant of Ishmael. Yeah, I buy that fucking bullshit. Are you kidding me? Like, the one guy in the Bible who didn't beget whom, who beget whom, who beget whom, who is a symbol of a lost soul, essentially, right? Conveniently, you are that person's descendant. Can't prove it at all. But hey, that's what the book says, is that I can't prove it. So that must mean I'm right. It's like, this is an obvious power play.
So there are things we can say are absolutely false about the Quran and the New Testament. I think you can say that Torah,
I just said that Moses isn't real.
Oh sure, yeah, you did.
But I guess, and once again, by the way, you know how you can prove that? Once again, because it happens way later than it's said to have happened. If you're looking in the time it's said to have happened, you have no evidence. But you do not start to have any written record of the Exodus story until the Babylonian exile. The earliest known version of that being written down was found in, I think, actually Iran.
We also know now, and have for quite some time, that Egypt was a lot older than we were told or thought it was. You know?
Well, it's just older than we thought it was, yeah. But
they're still not sure if it was because the way, apparently the way the government protects everything over there, nobody will, nobody knows if that's just what's believed or if that was actually just covered up by people.
Do you think aliens have interacted with Earth?
I don't...
Like extraterrestrial aliens.
I think that it's possible, but I wouldn't put money on it.
Other than David Bowie.
I would say that it's more likely that humans have had communication with interdimensional beings, right? Like, I think it's very possible to get to your DMT question, by the way, now that we told that story. Because the point, by the way, of that was just to be like, it's like, is this real? Is it not real? That's the one question. It's like, well, at the end of the day, if it gets you to improve your life, it doesn't really matter. And this is probably where the article of faith really comes from, is like people doing drugs and being like, dude, I can't answer that question for you because I'm stupid. I'm a human being here.
Sure. Well, so none of us know. I was just wondering what your
But so I think that those things are probably not aliens.
Okay.
I think that they are probably just, if I had to guess what they would literally be, I would guess that they are representations of essentially the Jungian unconscious.
Yeah, the shadow.
I think that it's likely that there is this quantum force of consciousness, right? You could describe it as an echo of all consciousness that ever has or will be, right? And I also think that is that kind of relies on a holographic universe theory, in my opinion, somewhat. At least that's how I came to it, because for those who don't know, the holographic universe, I am a layman, so I can only explain it in layman's terms, is basically there are really only two provable dimensions, and your interaction with the third dimension is completely dependent on your perspective from your position within the first two.
Oh,
right?
At any given time, yeah.
And so it means that, like, on some abstract quantum level I can't comprehend because I'm not a mathematician, that the third dimension is essentially a projection off of a 2D plane, and then that the fourth dimension which is time, is a reflection of that projection, right? And then if you get down with like some other theories, you start leveling up, and you who knows how many dimensions there are. There's a lot of, some say 23, but we know that there's at least 5 because gravity is the 5th, right? So what if this is some quantum echo of that exists because it's the actual force of consciousness. Your brain
it's AI from the future is what it is.
Well, but your brain emits electromagnetic waves. Right? Like, this is a fact.
Yep.
And basically,
we are little batteries.
Yeah, I think that more accurately, I would just, I mean, not that I know, but my postulation is that our bodies are like lightning rods that tap into this force of consciousness in a sense, right? But we also generate it, to be sure.
Right.
And we're just nodes, right? And you can kind of speak to this thing or get in touch with this thing through things like shrooms or DMT because it's there and you're like kind of enhancing your perception and your brain activity. You're generating more of the force of consciousness itself.
I like the idea of that with nodes.
Right. And
the idea of,
on a massive, eternal, as long as the species exists, potentially transcending just the species. Who knows if it includes other
insects,
mammals or
microbe life.
Yeah.
Right. We don't, and so like I think that that is basically what Jung is talking about with the Jungian unconscious when he starts saying no, it's real. It's not a metaphor because he kind of went down that path.
That's a really beautiful way of putting it.
But that's God. That's what the ancients would have said God was.
Sure. Yes, and I agree. I agree with that sentiment too. The reason I brought up, or initially asked you what you thought, is because I'm.
Are you rolling?
I'm convinced.
Here's what we should do, dude. Real quick.
Roll one.
Can you remember that question?
Yeah.
All right. First, this show is sponsored by Coast Smokes.
Hi.
My phone finally died. Damn it. Here, look at this. Beautiful. Do you guys want a pack of Coast Smokes?
I'll take one.
Oh, absolutely.
Jesus Christ.
I would love them. I would love. Ooh.
Ooh, look at that.
I wanted one before, but now I really want one.
So pick one.
I'll take the orange one. Demo.
The little ones there will get you high. We got the Delta 8s and the CBDs. You can have one of each, to be honest. They're really amazing.
I think I'll trade my choice.
No, do both. Take both, please.
Okay.
I've cartons of this shit.
Cool.
Yeah, sure.
And those ones, so those ones are interesting.
CBD and THC?
So that's D8, THC, and CBD, yes. And then the bigger pack is CBD and CBG, so it doesn't make you sleepy, which is the key. And then these are some HHC joints they sent me too.
Oh, word.
Nice.
HHC is cool if you have to take drug tests.
Yeah.
Because it won't show up.
Oh, nice.
Very, very much thank you.
Yeah. Well, dude, they're the fucking shit, and frankly, I've been very generous to my band, and frankly, I like their product because I'm trying to not smoke tobacco.
Same. Yeah, that's
so
what
like
I'm at too. So I big appreciate that.
Yeah.
Anyway, Coast CBD.
Well, I brought that up.
Kick the tobacco.
You should roll this into the joint. These are 3 things. Okay, I can't see them in 3D, to be honest, because I need. Jesus Christ.
He's not here. He died. I'm gonna go get something to drink. I'm listening.
Oh yeah. Would you mind grabbing me a water?
Yeah.
Or a sparkling water if you have them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this here is a hybrid from California.
All right.
And then this here is runts from the fam. And then this is some family banana kush.
Okay.
Which is very beautiful.
We have a nice.
So just break them up, make a melange. I can break them up too if you want to expedite it.
Let me clean up the tray here a little bit.
But yeah, I think that like, to keep it going for those who don't care about our weed, I think that it's pretty clear to me that whether it's real or not, this is what the ancients perceived as God.
Yes. And the reason
right?
I brought it up... Oh, sorry, go ahead. Finish.
Like, that's what they thought they were talking to. This is very likely... It's very likely that you may not even need psychedelics to talk to it. Because if you read the story of Gautama Buddha, when he reaches full enlightenment, you know how he knows? It's not like he is so arrogant as to say that he is fully enlightened. Fucking Brahma, the creator god, right? With the 4 faces and the 4 arms, shows up and says, hey, by the way, you did it.
Nice.
Right? Like, Brahma appears to him.
Well, that's pretty irrefutable, huh?
Well, and it's like, okay, so maybe he's talking to the same consciousness, right? And maybe it is us. And where we get into, I think, an interesting element is, since it may exist on, like, this dimensional level, there's likely a quantum element, which may mean that there are differing... Maybe this is why Brahma has 4 faces, right? Like, maybe there are differing sides depending on which reality you've jumped into.
Oh, okay.
Right? Maybe the God consciousness changes or has, at the very least, multiple possibilities, each that have complete incentive and justification to justify, to reinforce their own existence, right? Like,
sure.
So if there's one consciousness that is the result of, like, the ultimately bad scenario, and one consciousness that is the result of everyone making the best possible decisions morally, right?
And they exist together in some kind
They
of...
both would need to instruct you to, like, make those decisions,
right,
in order to sort of...
If I understand it correctly, that's how Krishna and Vishnu and that whole entity is looked at, as all the different things are just one. It's Krishna is
faces.
Yeah,
Krishna's like all of them, I thought, or something.
Yeah, Krishna is seen how by it, he appears to, or
I'm very unfamiliar with the Krishna stuff, so
he apparently, and I could be kind of jumbling this up a little bit. Apparently, he appears to you depending on what you are, you know, and so it's not so much a. It's kind of like you're saying, it's an internal thing, much like what we're talking about with the DMT, where it's like, you know, is that happening within me, or is it an external thing?
I think, Neef, what you're, if I can help you out, I think like what you're kind of saying is, instead of it being what field of existence you're on and seeing a different face of it there, it's more has to do with your mindset and who you are,
right,
as an individual.
Like I can't think of it's kind of a long name, and I'd butcher the name if I did, but it's the lion-headed version.
Oh, Narasimha.
Yeah, Narasimha. You know, that is Krishna as seen by a demon.
okay.
You know, that's how a demon sees him.
Defined as like a wicked person.
Somebody, anybody is wicked would see Krishna like that, and it's in fury, and
he rips out your entrails and pulls the evil out.
So I'm very I'm a complete novice when it comes to Hindu mythology, because it was always so fucking dense.
Yeah,
it is.
No doubt.
Is that this?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
It was always so dense
Yeah.
that, like, I was just like, what the fuck are they talking about right now, right?
Yeah.
And like you just said, because there's such a cultural divide because of this evolutionary gap, right? Cultural, at least, right? That, like, your mindset is not really, like, we don't understand samsara the way they do.
Right.
On an intrinsic level, where it's like, this is just an idea that's existed forever. Right? So you don't have to think about it.
Right.
It just kind of is, right?
Yeah.
That has to
That affects your
enhance
mindset.
your perception.
Yeah.
Right? Or alter your perception, I mean. Like, that was always confusing, but I finally wanted to get into it after, frankly, doing DMT. Like, the first time I ever did DMT, I essentially saw, like, an Aztec version of, like, Vishnu, right? And I realized that, by the way, that was also when I was like, oh, I think, like, the 6... You'll notice, like, we've definitely talked about this before, but in the Bible, when Isaiah first sees an angel, a seraphim, it's described as having 6 wings.
Yeah.
The bottom 2 are crossed, you know, kind of like the fucking lotus position. And then the top 2 are obscuring its face, right? Fluttering about in a manner that obscures the face.
Ezekiel, right?
Ezekiel sees
Oh no, Ezekiel
something
sees
else.
thrones. That's right.
He sees like the
wheels.
higher, the four faces on the wheel or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Wait, remind me again. Where in the Bible is this?
Isaiah.
Isaiah. Okay, go ahead.
And basically, so he sees the seraphim. The seraphim has the crossed wings. The top wings are obscuring the face, so he can't make out the face, and the middle wings are just fluttering all about, keeping it afloat. Right. Well, the Vishnu, potentially Brahma, I guess, because Brahma also has 4 arms, right? Figure that I saw, it had like this more Aztec, Mesoamerican headdress vibe, and it with all these beings when you see them, you know they have a face, but you can't remember the face. This is the thing, like everyone says.
Right, yeah.
And
that's so funny.
Right?
Yeah, I have an experience very similar to that.
Right. So like, I remember it had like these glowing eyes, it had this face, but like I couldn't really tell you what the face looked like.
Right.
I couldn't tell you if it had 4 faces or not. And I could tell you that its top 2 arms were just these ones were all fluttering about, wibbidium, like every weird symbol you could do, and these 2 were fluttering about too, and then it was in the lotus position, which is essentially, to me, what Isaiah is probably describing, right?
And if I can, like, it doesn't make any sense, but with things that I've seen kind of similar like that, where you can't see the face, but it has a face, and like constant motion, it's actually like it's in 2 places at once, but your mind is having a hard time quantifying that, I feel like. So instead of it being motion, that's just how it is perceived, at least in similar things that I've seen, I think.
Right, well, and this also may be why he sees like just arms and legs behind it.
Right.
And for those who don't know, the reason that I find Isaiah's vision to be relevant is because the chapter ends with him saying, "And the room is full of smoke." And we know from 3 architectural sites that have been found that the Levites at this time would hotbox the dome. We mentioned this earlier. And they tested the resin in the fire pit. And every time what it came up with was like a hashish, acacia DMT rock, right? Like weed and DMT together. Fill the room. And Isaiah is the one selected. They're all very happy for him to speak to another being, and that's what makes him the prophet, right?
Got it. That's interesting. The reason I had brought up the DMT entities or just whatever it is,
it's a great question.
Is I'm on the mindset that it's somewhere imaginary, real, external, internal is more like English failing us. I think it's somewhere in. Neither of those things is the truth.
Do you meditate?
Not as much as I should. Sometimes.
So part of sati, which is mindfulness, is this idea that you are supposed to, for a temporary moment at least, as long as you can, you're paying attention to attention, right? So you're separating inner from outer in a sense, right? There is only sensation, right? The rest is your inference and abstraction, right? And it's structured and it's useful in the way it's structured. But what you're seeking to do is not determine what is inner and outer right now. You're seeking to wonder how you determine in the first place. You're seeking to watch yourself determine.
I'm gonna have to look it up because there's an Alan Watts that it goes perfect with that. Go ahead.
And like, so that's I'd say a good way of a good explanation of what you're saying though. There's the inner and outer. I wouldn't say it's English failing us. It's just that like Western philosophy is much more concerned with epistemology and what is, and Eastern philosophy is very poetically concerned with experience. It's phenomenology. And it's not really philosophy, in my opinion.
And on that, there's an excellent Alan Watts
Or if it is, it's phenomenological.
To go along with that. You know Alan Watts?
Yes. He got a big old beard.
He was big into Eastern philosophy, but he was obviously a Western philosopher. There was a young man who said, though, "It seems that I know, but what I know, fuck. So, you got me stoned. I blame you. Let me try this one more time. There was a man who said, though, it seems that I know, but what I would like to see is the I that knows when I know that I know that I know.
I'm sorry, can you read that?
Can you read it for us? Because I'm struggling here.
There was a young man who said, though, that though is weird, because it's clearly...
Right.
Is this the full poem?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, maybe not.
There was a young man who said, though, it seems that I know, but what I would like to see is the I that knows me when I know that I know that I know. Yeah, that's like an actual field of psychology. Apparently Steven Pinker's next book is going to be about it. It's like part of, I think, game psychology, but it's like how you know what you know, and how, but also you know. So the game part is that you know that the other person knows that you know, right? Because there's a great Friends episode on this, but like it really does change the dynamic. If I did something, let's say that like, you know, I fucked his mom or something, right? Like, or some just gross example, sorry. That's maybe a problem, right? Like, yo, she's geriatric, she's in the nursing home, like this is uncool, dude.
In his case, you'd have to dig her up, but...
Actually, she's a nerd.
Oh, fair enough. So, point is, you do something despicable. If I know that no one knows, I'm not really thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
I'm fuck. But like, if it turns out that you go like, yo, dude, so
I saw you
Neef
fuck that urn, dude.
Neef doesn't know, but like I kind of saw that shit on a security camera. I got your back. I erased it, but like, just so you know, I know that you did that, right? And like. Then all of a sudden, the dynamic is completely different, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so much of Eastern philosophy is about not even self-love, but right, because I think that would actually be seen as frivolous. I hate the idea of like you should love the parts of yourself that are worth loving, and you should despise the parts of yourself that are despicable.
And you should acknowledge that both exist, right? It's
Unless they don't. Like, maybe you have nothing to love about yourself. And maybe you should kill yourself. I can't tell you that, but
yeah,
like...
That's not true. Everyone's got something they can love about themselves.
I mean, that's true.
I mean, you're here, first of all. Love that part. Love that you exist.
I'm just saying, like, I'm not going to tell you that you're wrong unless I know you're wrong, right? Like, if I've never met someone and like, what if I have nothing
hypothetically,
to love about?
someone
hypothetically,
could
you
have
could
no
exist.
good values, I guess.
Right. There definitely are psychopaths.
I mean, but they're...
Although I think a sociopath is worse. Because apparently, I was reading the distinction is that a sociopath knows that there is morality and just ignores it, whereas a psychopath just doesn't even consider it.
What they normally say is that
That makes a psychopath more dangerous.
If you look at
Yes.
well, if you
But a
look
sociopath
at it,
is morally worse.
if you look at it in a violence aspect, a sociopath will befriend you and murder you, where a psychopath will come and tell you, "I'm about to murder you." You know.
Right.
You know, and so in essence, a sociopath is also kind of a liar, or at least a psychopath is being honest.
Well, I think a psychopath, though,
You know.
might consider there's nothing wrong with lying. Right? If there's nothing wrong with killing, there's nothing wrong with lying. So I still think a psychopath could lie.
Yeah,
Like, I would guess Jeffrey Dahmer
well,
is a
psychopaths
psychopath.
Psychopaths do. They still want things.
right.
They
might lie
have
about what they're
desires.
doing.
So they, if this outcome is going to get me more apples than this outcome,
right.
I'm going to lie to get the
Right.
apples. Absolutely.
And it's not to say that necessarily they're going to be more honest as people, but the idea of
I get what you're saying
of their
about
drive,
the
of a
social-
violence
Yeah,
drive.
yeah.
When you're looking at a violent aspect,
I agree,
like
yeah.
a murderer that's a sociopath is actually
A psychopath,
You know.
they just have this... I mean, I think they both have the urge, but, like, they just don't think the urge is wrong.
Right.
Right.
They don't understand. Yeah.
right.
And I think, you know, a psychopath is probably pretty rare, by the way. And probably
Yeah.
likely also has other issues, such as, like, you know, might be fucking mentally deficient.
I think there's.
Is that,
also,
are we allowed to say that?
I think there,
Here
and
we
I
go.
might not be.
Can't let almost anything fly.
Alex-
I tried to not say retarded just to avoid you guys getting some heat.
Alice, I might not be right about this, so definitely like Google it. But like, I'm pretty sure psychopaths have like a psychopath is not made; they're born that way. Is my
I think both
understanding.
are made.
But sociopaths
Or
can
are
be.
born. I don't think...
Sociopaths can be created through
Well,
trauma.
I think in general that's a psychological or psychology question that's been
Here's the thing.
There
I
are
think
whether you agree with this or not, there are documented, and double check me on this, but there are documented cases of people not being a sociopath and then becoming one. Whether they were just
better at lying about not being.
But
I guess that's the question.
They developed better, into actually being more of that.
Here's the thing: is like there are definitely, if you consider epigenetics and you consider that nature and nurture are about 50% by most available research, because anything that contends that anything is a majority is immediately contradicted by some other thing that claims the opposite, right? Like, so it usually is like, okay, I think the scientific community would agree it's about 50-50, right? Why else would they invest in fucking propaganda?
What's 50-50? I'm sorry.
Nature and nurture.
Why else would they invest in propaganda?
That's a nurture shit, right? Like, how do you?
Are you saying your
brainwash
behavior is 50%?
I'm saying that child rearing,
Yeah.
and how you become the person you are is half genetic and it's half your circumstance.
I mean, I wouldn't agree that
because
it's
you're
like
conditioned. You're
50-50.
conditioned. I would say it's about 50-50.
I would probably argue that it's more environmental, than it is here.
I think that's also a line that could be moved depending on the situation.
I can't remember
the subject. Yeah.
Yeah, depending on how you're raised. If you're raised in a much more technologically advanced society, and you're a bubble boy basically, and you're sheltered like nobody's business, that's going to be a different.
You're relying less on instinct.
I don't think your parents' genetics play that much of a factor in your. They play a factor for sure. Your genetics play a factor in how you think, no doubt. But I think your environment plays a much bigger degree.
Who's providing your environment for you?
That's why it's hard to distinguish.
Right?
Well, it's hard to distinguish. I mean, does my son act like me because he's around me and he lives with me, or is it because he's my son?
Well, the answer is both, but I'm not so sure
it's absolutely
50-50.
both. But here's how I know it's 50-50. With enough certainty to contend the notion. You know about epigenetics? So the concept of epigenetics, which at this point is pretty indisputably real, right? Is that what we found is that the same gene can express itself with different characteristics, right? And environmental pressures put upon the organism trigger that expression. So it is possible that you weren't a psychopath and you became one, right? Because something could go. You could have.
Oh, maybe I had it backwards.
It's kind of like what I was
you
talking
can just
about
have
domestication.
a psychotic episode, right?
Because domestication literally genetically altered creatures.
So there could be triggers in your.
I would say schizophrenia is more likely.
There could be triggers in your genetic, in your DNA that like you come across a circumstance and it makes you act a certain way, and that would be behavioral rather than.
Well, it's not okay. Makes you act. Gets into this question we should get into in
Oh, that's why you're saying
will.
It's 50-50, because it's both of it takes the thing causing it and also the wiring in your brain.
The thing responding.
You could have an anger issue, but if that's inherent.
Right.
But if you were raised to like keep that quilled and no, I'm not just going to go fly off and beat the crap out of everybody.
That's fascinating. Okay,
your kid will still have the anger issue though.
You're still going to have this anger issue, but you've been
because
raised.
Because of the way you're defining it, like everything is both. So it kind of is 50-50.
Well, and here's what we know about free will, right? We know that it is almost certainly not true or does not exist in the sense that we feel it exists, meaning the idea that I just go, I'm going to pick up this can, right? Well, it's like, I picked up the can because I'm illustrating a point of a rudimentary action because I'm in a fucking podcast, right? Everything is driven by pressure, right? I probably picked up the can, frankly, because I'm lazy and it's closer to me than anything else, right? Like, and especially when you're in heated situations, we've done MRI scans as well as fMRI scans at this point that show that your brain makes a decision about like 7 milliseconds before the brain recognizes that the decision has been made, which means you never ever are sitting there in the moment, in the driver's seat going, yes, no, right? Like, it happens, and you're like, oh, this is what I've done. Always, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is why self-reflection and meditation and entheogenic use of psychedelics is likely healthy for a wide swath of the population, because the only way, especially in a supposedly free country that's supposed to be democratic, is the only way that works is if everybody actually exerts their free will to the maximal ability.
That's
right?
funny. That's very thelemic of you, Aleister Crowley. Like, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law is a commandment, not a suggestion. Do what thou wilt is the law. Do, as long as you're not interfering with someone else's will, you must, in order for society to work, you have to be doing what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he wasn't including animals in that.
Right. Well, yeah. So fuck him. Like, yeah, I'll just fuck a rabbit. You know, like, all right. But like, it's my will, and no one else said I shouldn't. So
yeah,
'cause I'm
Aleister
alone.
Crowley was not a good guy.
Yeah. But like, and to be fair, you should talk to Will from Karma Vulture, because he knows more about Crowley than I do for sure. But yeah, dude. So like, what we found though is that through things like meditation and therapy and fucking psychedelics, is that people can change patterns. Like, people can quit smoking. They've done studies on quitting smoking through meditation, right? And it is actually, I think, as effective, if not more effective, than gum, right? And if you consider that, like, probably a lot of the people who are winning with the gum in this scenario are probably not. It's not because the gum just gave them a better buzz, and so they were able to kind of. It's because they probably really cared about quitting.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
That's how I quit tobacco was, and I tried different methods, but using gum. But if you look at the instructions, it tells you, how to do it, and it doesn't really wean you off of what your addiction is. You got to understand your addiction. You're addicted to nicotine physically. You're addicted to an oral fixation.
I'm fine with the oral fixation.
Right.
So
literally what you have to do, and how I did it, was I got the gum and I was tearing it down through the week and wrapping it with regular gum, so I could lower my nicotine amount. And then I don't tell you to do that because they just want you to buy the gum, and you have to want to quit.
Well, yeah, dude. Well, and that's the thing, is you basically gave yourself the therapy,
yep.
right? So basically that's probably why it has about the same rate of success. It's the therapy. It's the thinking. Not that you need a therapist. You can do it to yourself. That's what I've generally done. I've tried therapists, and my issue was, when I was younger, was I could always fool them that I was fine. Like, I've had therapists tell me, dude, you seem to have it pretty figured out. When I was like 21. And like, I don't think he was being sarcastic, because like at the time I had been, doing a lot. I've been thinking about it, man. I've been having philosophical awakenings here, left and right. I was an absurdist, still am, and it was just like, okay, dude, if I'm smarter than the therapist, this isn't gonna work. And how the fuck do I trust that this? How do I trust that I'm gonna find the right one without blowing a fuck ton of money finding out? Or I could just solve my own problems, since what they're really doing is listening. You could just listen to your fucking self.
Right.
For once. You know what I mean? And think about, oh, why did I do that?
And I think you both make an excellent point that, like, most of the pathways for getting people out of bad habits, like, they don't actually get you anywhere. They get you, like, for example, what was it? Was it heroin that was invented to get people off of morphine, or vice versa?
No, what it is
I don't know.
no, methadone.
I was gonna say, but that can't be what he's talking about.
Yeah, and there's been a couple other things, but heroin was always
fentanyl might be what you're thinking of.
That might be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
There was some opiate that was invented to help get people get off of another.
Could be
opiate.
Dilaudid, too.
And anyway,
Remember Dilaudid?
My point was, they invented something to get people off of an opiate, and it became a stronger opiate addiction.
What happened to Dilaudid, though? Yeah, that's got to be fentanyl.
I know that I know that methadone is
Because people
very,
still
very
be
bad
loving
for
morphine,
you.
bro.
William Burroughs wrote about it many years ago, and he talked about there was another treatment that was proven to be way better.
I mean, people love all
But they
opiates.
understood, and he said that the methadone, literally, Burroughs talked about the methadone treatment being just a way to keep people strung. Because he said they had figured out a proven method to help get them off back in the, I want to say late 60s, maybe even early 60s, and they kind of said, no, we're not going to use that, we're going to use methadone.
This guy also said that he shot his wife in the head by accident as a closeted gay. So I don't really trust his assessment too much on reality.
Oh yeah, Burroughs. Yeah.
Fucking, not
Burroughs
that his
is-
books aren't awesome,
Yeah, Burroughs is pretty heavy dude.
but like, no, dude. I accidentally shot her as a party trick. This is like, oh, dude, the king, he just tried to kill me first. Like,
What was that movie where they showed it?
Naked Lunch, bro. It's
Yeah,
from the book.
yeah,
He
yeah,
writes
yeah.
about it in the book.
I
Yeah.
got that
Because he writes the book while he's, I think, fleeing. Isn't he in Morocco? On the lam?
Yeah.
Because he shot his wife in the face in
So
Mexico.
crazy.
Lucky for fucking him. So
So
once he gets
crazy.
famous, he's back in America, no problem.
Yeah.
Although Blonsky, he couldn't go to America, but that's a different story.
Those guys went. Yeah, they had some pretty wild stuff going on. I mean, when
I always looked up to the Beats when I was younger.
when you look at, well, I mean, that's the thing is, it's like I learned early on that, and it's a lesson that a lot of people could take nowadays is, you have to take the art as it is, and then you have to take the artist as they are. It's. I'm not gonna.
Dude, were we gonna cancel Van Gogh because he was a
Right.
stalker?
Right.
Like,
That's the thing. Is it's like I'm not gonna. Yeah, Burroughs was probably not the best dude in the world, but I'm not gonna not pay attention to his work.
Yeah.
His work. I'm not gonna deny that I think his work is great.
well, okay, is it if you consider that the role of the artist is, in a sense, the actual opposite role of the pulpit, right? In that instead of embodying virtue, you embody the time. The zeitgeist, the spirit of the time is not, it will never be a virtuous spirit, because never have people been on the whole virtuous, right? By religion's own admission around the world. So considering man's propensity for sin, if you're going to understand a time, you kind of need to understand how the sinners were thinking, because you're probably one of them, whether you're religious or not, right? Like, if you trusted a priest's story of history every single time, right? Not that I'm denigrating any specific work here, but like, let's be real, like, this guy's a fucking author, but like, dude, what does he fucking know about what was going on, right? Like, if you want to know what was going on, this is the whole point, by the way, of Henry the Fourth into Henry the Fifth, right? Is what makes a great king, is that he ignored the rules of the court, and he went and slummed it with the fucking rubes down at the fucking pub, and
Rubes.
and like, just like, they were like, oh my god, we're friends with the prince, and of course once it came time, he's just like, I don't fucking know you people, get the fuck out of here. But like, he knew how they thought, and he knew what he was dealing with, right? This is what, like, some of these people were brigands who like fought in his father's army,
And they respected him for it. For,
well, then he kills a couple of them because he told them he would kill them if he ever saw him again, and he has to keep his oath. But the point is, like, he rose to his higher calling from being, like, none of these were good people necessarily, right? And he rose above that because he has to be a king. He's not an artist, right? But it's pointing out, Shakespeare. There's some saucy theories about this guy, right? Like, not that I really ascribe to any theories of Shakespeare. I don't really care.
It's really kind of
Doesn't matter.
It's so stupid, yeah. Like,
did Shakespeare exist? Did he not? Who cares?
yes.
Yeah.
How about yes? Duh.
Yeah.
Like,
Did Jesus Christ exist or not? No one cares. I mean,
no,
I don't give a fuck.
that's
It
at
doesn't
least
change the
something
story.
of a question.
Well, it doesn't change
like,
the story at all.
Right. So
I mean, it doesn't it doesn't actually matter. But anyway,
No, yeah,
back to Shakespeare.
Well, yeah. So Shakespeare, dude, in Henry the Fifth, you know, he of course wages a great war. Blah blah blah. He's a great leader. The point is that art has to examine the common people. He used the common tongue, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it was the vernacular, right? Like,
right.
This is the
That's good politics.
Well, it's not just politics though. It's like this is
It's salesmanship.
Right.
These are great works of art. You know what I mean? Like, whenever I do meet someone who thinks that aliens have visited Earth, I would be like, I mean, if I had to guess one, fucking Shakespeare, dude, is just like, holy fuck, this guy just like structured all the stories. There you are. Here's all the fucking stories, dude.
The Bible too.
The Bible.
There's a lot of
is a bunch of universal stories.
They're
That's the
archetypes.
huge difference.
There's a lot of
archetypal stories. Shakespeare plays with that too.
He uses myth for sure.
There's
like
a lot
Hamlet,
of ancient
right?
Asian and Chinese stories that predate that. If you look at a lot of old,
all the greats.
Well, these are, by the way,
Yeah.
folk stories. Do you think that the people who are? Do you think that the guy who's wandering around with a lute singing to girls in towers is like a nice guy, or is he like a sexual maniac?
Oh, like in Dandelion and Witcher.
I don't know either of those things, but like,
well, I mean,
you know, this is how people got laid, right? And like, if you're Homer, you think Homer didn't get shit faced, and like probably fuck some whores?
Well, you think about. I mean, with Shakespeare, you think about like some of the most famous, like Romeo and Juliet. What was going on? They're rich families, they're rich kids, bebopping around, slumming it, kicking it, doing their thing, and he wants to hook up with the only girl that he ain't supposed to hook up with. Simple. But that's what it is. It's what else do they got to do? You know, they're literally hanging at he's not supposed to be over there. He ain't even supposed to associate. And also, you're hanging outside some woman's window.
And on Shakespeare a little bit more, like, okay, so the Bible is pre-existing archetypal stories.
It's not.
Shakespeare created archetypes. Shakespeare.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Shakespeare, we think of those. Everyone borrows from that because that is the archetype.
Well,
I just described.
Even if he didn't create them, he embodied them so well.
The existence of him to the Western world. What I was just saying a minute ago is there's a lot of ancient, much earlier than him, Asian stories that pretty much embody. I made that same statement when it came to a lot of kung fu movies, especially in movies now that step back to that, and I'm like, you can literally. Well, there's a lot of films that come out that are Western that I've seen a kung fu film from the '60s that literally.
Back to literature, more recent example would be like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Is extremely archetypal. Not only is it archetypal.
I think that's a guy who took some fucking mushrooms.
Lewis Carroll,
and
if
wrote
you
a
didn't
good
know,
fucking book.
Was an Oxford theologian, and he was very into scripture and studying the Torah.
Right, and so it's likely he did mushrooms.
Oh yeah,
because if he was studying scripture,
Lewis Carroll, there's no doubt in my mind that Lewis Carroll did not dabble in psychedelics, but my point with him was it's a similar thing where a lot of stuff has borrowed from Alice in Wonderland, but Alice in Wonderland is also an archetypal story borrowed from other archetypal stories. But any of these things, Shakespeare, the Bible, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, could exist in a pocket by itself, and you would still resonate with it the same way. That's what makes it an archetypal story, because there's something about this story in you, in your blood, in your DNA, because like a predator hunting after you, that's an archetypal story.
Is Through the Looking Glass not a better book?
Than Alice's Adventures in Wonderland?
Yes.
A better book? I don't think so. I guess it depends how you... They're both very good. They're very different. I think the first one...
That's the one where
book.
They call the Mad Hatter as a witness, right? And he just completely... Where Alice gets on trial? Mm-hmm. Right. Dude. Because she beats her in chess or whatever?
Yeah.
So, like, the Queen's an idiot, and a child has just defeated her in her own game. And because of this, she cheats and puts the child on trial, and then the child's witnesses, who are called the defender, are so fucking either high or dumb or just incompetent that they all just basically get her sentenced to death, and then I forget exactly how she escapes. But like that symbolism there to me was always a much more interesting story. It's not as archetypical, but it's definitely almost like in the Jonathan Swift tradition.
Tip of the hat. Yeah.
Right? Like it's absolutely mocking society.
Yeah.
Right?
They're both. When you ask me that,
no matter
toss-up
what
for
you
me,
do,
it's really hard.
Yeah, it's
like,
one of those. No matter
really
what you do, you're still going to end up on the losing end, running from this situation because that's what the queen.
Hey, and isn't that what we're kind of dealing with now? The Mad Queen is just kind of making dictations. She's falling upstairs. She's
flailing and just babbling on about you know.
Well,
shake the hand of people.
I have to read that book again, actually, because I'd be interested to know, does the Mad Queen have an advisor who is puppeteering her? I can't remember.
I don't think so.
She has advisors, but they're kind of... actually, that's an excellent point. What I'm saying is not apt. The Mad Queen is somewhere behind the scenes, yeah. But the Mad Queen's not what we see, sure.
Right, well, and it's... Dude, you want to talk about falling up the fucking stairs? It's like so
off
obvious.
Your bicycle, or
it's
reading
so
the
obvious
teleprompter.
that this dude is not in charge, and this is so obviously why the world is going to shit fast. And what's funny is, I think that like the only reason the Saudi Arabians are even considering giving Biden the time of day is because they expect that he will get his ass kicked in 2024, right? And if not, then just like, whatever, fine. We don't have to sell you oil ever again.
I don't think the DNC is going to run Biden. I don't think...
Doesn't
I think
matter.
he wants them to, but he's not... They're not going to do it.
Of course he wants it, but...
They're not going to fucking do it. They'll run... AOC's not old enough, so they'll run...
It's all about how old you'll be on election day. She'll be like a month in.
She will?
Yep.
Well, then they'll run AOC.
Dumb move.
Actually, they're not real happy with her because she's been going off about them.
Did you see the video of her that troll did?
She brought up
but she'll
the
win the
Capitol
primaries.
Police.
It's not a
she's talking what people were saying was conspiracy theory.
It is a day thing.
Yeah, she's straight
it's
up
all,
talking.
but it's two hands playing it.
She's literally talking the same stuff that if we said a few months ago.
The people puppeteering her are not the DNC.
About the insurrection.
Maybe not, but the people puppeting the DNC are the same people puppeting the Republican convention.
Well, she's absolutely spread
DNC
misinformation about the
busted up a little bit.
Yeah,
just like the GOP, but it's all run by.
Well, it's actually all run by
it's because,
the literal devil, Satan. That hand. That's the Bible tells us in Revelations, in fact. So, and it's all his hand, and then it just kind of just gets subsected down into. There's a whole like. Pyramid scheme of businesses and corporations and countries that's all networked underneath.
I think that's
his
what
reptilian
Cobra did.
hand.
I think that's what Cobra did
in G.I. Joe.
Yeah, G.I. Joe. They started as a pyramid scheme.
Well, dude, but
you know what? Both G.I. Joe and the Cobra Corporation are owned by Hasbro. Think about it.
The issue with AOC running is that for sure she loses. She can't win, right? She's not likable enough. She's too easy to expose, right? She won't debate anybody, right? Like, love him or hate him, she said it was catcalling when she was challenged to a debate by like fucking Shapiro, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's catcalling?
Yeah.
It's like that's like not catcalling. That's respecting you for your mind.
There's a
like,
video recently of
of
there's a YouTube guy that saw her walking into the building.
No, that's what I was asking if you'd seen.
And and he's going off. He's definitely
going off how?
Oh well, hollering at her.
Are you talking about the one where he's like, AOC, my favorite big booty Latina?
Yeah.
He's trolling her. Yeah.
In the minute, and you see
he
her,
wasn't angry.
She turns.
She's like, let's do a selfie.
But you can see her approach. Looks pissed. She actually quoted later, I think, said that I would have hit him or something, but
no, she literally.
Silly.
She
silly.
In the video. The reason it's funny is because she came over, and she goes, hey, let's do a selfie. and then like hears that he's kind of talking about her ass. Because it's not easy to hear what people are saying, right? Like, he's not talking that loud, right? He's right in front of the fucking camera.
Yeah.
And
it is her one redeeming quality.
I didn't know she had a good ass until now. So, like, honestly, this will help her. Yeah. But, like, fucking her aide grabs her and rushes her away. Like, so her aide was kind of like trying to keep her.
It looked at me like she turned a little pissed. And, like,
I think she realized her aide was right and trying to prevent her.
Her aide went, look pissed.
And well, I think the way he sounded pretty loud. And I think she heard it.
I think she heard "I love you, AOC," because he shouted that part.
Because the way she looked when she turned, she almost looked like she was gonna to go say something kind of hard. But like as her aide did that, it almost seemed like she caught herself.
She goes, "Let's do a selfie." That's all.
And it was like, "Let's do a selfie," and then walked off. Now her boyfriend. Kept walking, didn't stop.
Do you guys think there's anyone that...
That's the wise thing to do. Like, just don't listen to those fucking people.
Do you guys think there is anyone who could run against Trump and win in 2024?
DeSantis.
Assuming that we have democracy?
I don't know if that's... I think that... the reason I say unfortunately is because I wish someone could beat Trump other than DeSantis, but I'd much prefer DeSantis to Trump for sure. Although, I don't know how much I trust him. Because it's like...
to see a picture, I can't...
It's a little too good to be true.
It kind of goes
and
back
also,
to whoever,
he's too conservative, dude. Like, he's not a moderate, right? What you need... The one thing that Trump actually was that people just won't really ever talk about...
This guy?
Is that Ron DeSantis? Yeah. I mean, that's a weird-looking picture of him, but yeah.
I don't know who this guy is.
It's like,
governor of Florida.
They found the one angle where he doesn't look funny.
Florida.
So would he run Democrat or Republican?
He's a Republican.
Okay. So in the primaries, he would win against Trump. Is what
I think he could because he has balls, unlike everyone else. I mean, Ted Cruz technically did go like, "How dare you?" But then he caved. Also, Ted Cruz just seems slimy. So it's like
I want to see at this point.
This guy has a track record of like doing a good job with COVID, but the issue is, it's like, dude. How do I know this guy is not just like another military-industrial complex fucking tool?
Well, to me, I don't have any faith in
it.
And
by the way, here's the other question: how bad is that? Right? Because you have to think about this is why I liked what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about transhumanism. It's a great first question: what's going to end the world? Right? Like, fucking. You have to have, in order to calculate what is right or wrong for a society, you have to have agreement upon the long-term goal, right? So, like one of the fundamentally good points that Bill Maher made in Religulous is, it's like, well, if your goal is to have the world end,
you shouldn't be in charge.
Well, I mean, I don't think that these people. I don't think that many people are that fanatical, right?
No, that's a subsect of people that actually like.
And I don't think they usually get in charge.
Exist. Like I'm praying for mayhem. I'm praying for tidal waves, but he doesn't actually. There's very few people that actually are
Reagan
that fundamental. Christian.
And Bush didn't actually press the button, right? Like, even though they were good evangelicals, right? Like, fucking. Doesn't mean their social policy was the best, right? But, like, those are separate issues. Point is, though, I think that, like, when it comes to what the fuck, now I'm high again. What was that fucking issue we were just talking about?
I too.
Are we here? We're here right now?
Are you?
We were talking about the presidential election and with Republican Party.
Oh, DeSantis, right.
DeSantis.
Okay, thank you. Good job, buddy.
Yeah, that's what he does.
So with DeSantis, it's like, it's not that I think that he's a religious radical and that's the problem on the world stage. In fact, at this point, I think what we are seeing is that, like, if you're at all honest or you at all get honest streams of information, right? Which means you have to watch all the streams of information and see what the crossover is, right? Like, you can see, oh, hey, weak American foreign policy is fucking up the world, although it's definitely making us rich, right? Because it turns out that, like, the funny thing about the quagmires in Afghanistan and Iraq is, like, people were kind of starting to notice, like, man, just not that many troops are dying, and you're spending how much? Right? Like, there's not that many battles anymore. Like, there are definitely things going down. You need to have a presence, sure, blah, blah, blah. But, like, if you read about, like, it's not like there was just day-to-day fighting for fucking a decade straight.
But every year our military spending would go up.
I haven't heard anything about Ukraine lately.
Well, because now they're losing. But, like...
Technically, they say they've pretty much lost.
Shocking.
I've heard that a while ago is my point.
Yeah.
Like, where
of course that was going to happen, dude. Like, because the American people have no will to defend Ukraine.
Yeah.
Right? And by the way, not that... I genuinely hope that Trump does not run. Because I think he's just an easily manipulated narcissist. And I don't think that's what you need right now.
Well, I don't believe... Well, go ahead. Sorry.
But, like, I can tell you right now that fucking Putin would not have done that shit if Trump was president. Because Trump would have leaped at the opportunity to be a wartime president.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Especially in the first actually just cause for war.
For better or for worse.
Under the American hegemony
happened,
since essentially Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Gulf War. The first Gulf War. Fucking,
and honestly, that would that would really suck.
Yeah.
I don't want to be involved in Ukraine.
Yeah, but okay.
If we gotta go
here's
fight,
what we've learned.
There's a whole lot of other people that would be way easier for us to fight against than Russia. That's not a military that we really want to go.
I'm not concerned with protecting Hunter Biden's assets.
No. Here's the thing, though. It's
that either.
Obviously, you're going to have corruption within that sort of a system. The thing to keep in mind, though, when it comes to geopolitical stability, and thus actually the daily comfort of most people on the planet, right, and enabling prosperity for them, like. There's a reason why America decided they were going to become the world police after World War II. It's because, you just, like, almost destroyed the world 2 times, fuckheads, right? Like, and by the way, the entirety of the 1800s had precursor wars that formed the alliances that led to the world wars, right? There's, like, the War of Spanish Succession has the exact same allies versus the exact same people, except Spain is with Italy and fucking Germany and stuff, right? Like, the Holy Roman Empire, the Catholics. Right? And then fucking you have the 30 Years' War, you have the Napoleonic Wars, right? Like, Europe took over the world because Europe was at war with itself so often that people were like, I'm out of here. You know what I mean? And, like, then that war just followed, right? But it turns out then you got really good at war, right? And you got so good at war you could destroy the world. And then it just so happens that America over here has taken all your people who specifically have a mindset appropriate for danger at this point in time, right? Like, every single person in America pre either of the world wars is there because someone who is a direct descendant they can remember at the very least risked that journey, right? And left everything they ever knew to go work on a fucking farm in the middle of nowhere with no idea if you were going to get murdered by, like, someone or not.
Wild West, man.
Right? So, like, but also just even if you're an Italian in New York and,
it's still the
you
Wild
might
West.
get the shit kicked out of you. Right? Like, and it's terrifying and chaos, right? But the thing is, all those people working in factories and working on farms, these are some, you ever see, like, why Indiana basketball teams are always so good? Like, these dudes are huge, dude. Like, they're like, these are some farm boys, right? Like, you send those people over to fight a bunch of Europeans who are tired, right? Because they've already been at war for, like, 2 years or something, right? Maybe 3. And you have a superior capacity for production and resources because of all the land you control. You fuck up the world, handily, by the way, right? Like, the only reason we had to drop the nuke is because we wanted to see what happened, and also because you knew Japan wasn't going to give up because it's not in their culture, so you had to break them quickly or you're just going to risk your own lives, which is, frankly, a justifiable decision.
Absolutely.
Right? They brought it to this.
Well, they
Sorry.
say. Well, I think the other point to make on that is ultimately.
Although we definitely goaded them into bombing us.
Ultimately, save Japanese lives as well, with the bombings.
Well, yeah, of some, and then not of others. You know, that's the fucking sort of, as Robert McNamara accurately said, like, you know, if we'd lost, we would have been tried as war criminals, the same as the Nazis and the Japanese were, and war is a crime, right? And you should seek to not have wars. So if that's, for instance, your goal for the world, it might make sense then why you demilitarized Japan. Right? Conveniently, the former prime minister who advocated for remilitarization of Japan and formed a very strong friendship with United States leaders was just murdered. Definitely, probably not by China or anything.
Oh, of course not.
But he wanted to remilitarize because what he was seeing was that Americans have no taste for war, and look, I don't blame them.
They talked about that in Slaughterhouse 5. Actually, there's the internment camp or a concentration camp in World War II. They have some POWs, which I guess is not a concentration camp, but you have British and American soldiers together, and they're all shitting on the Americans, like, you're not fashionable, like, all of you just. Like, we all have our, everyone's proper. And they're like, it's like, America sent, we sent our best. And this is your best? And, like, just because they weren't posh about it?
Well, I mean, also, a lot of people in America signed up. Like, you didn't really have to draft people early on, right? Like, people were eager to save the world, right? Like, that's how, the glory was still a factor in your day-to-day life. Because battle was still a day-to-day occurrence, right? Like, you still got in fights at school, right?
Yeah.
I think that, like, what you see now is when you have an America full of people who are not, with all due respect to many people, including my former self, fit for battle, let's say. Right? Like, what's the obesity rate in America right now? It's bad.
Yeah.
Right? It's
not
terrible.
what it is in the rest of the world.
It's exceptionally bad. And, like, unfortunately, a lot of the dumb, sort of, like, gun-toting right-wing nuts, right? America people. It's like, yeah, you have a shit ton of guns, but, dude, you couldn't outrun
right.
a fucking,
You're right. Yeah,
turtle.
You're not ready for it. Yeah.
And it's like, so, like, I mean, I'm not saying that, like, a fat guy with a gun can't kill some motherfuckers, but, like, the point is, like, if you don't think that there's incentive if by, let's say, interests who seek to unseat the American hegemony to spur along a crisis of health in the American community through addiction, through addiction to food.
It's a way to destroy a company or destroy a country without actually going into their soil.
Fifth generation warfare.
Do that.
Yeah.
They can't do that. They can't just walk through.
Well, it's what we'd been doing for a long time after World War II.
Right, but because we have guns, they can't do that.
No. After World War II, though, we've also done things where we've just propagandized, right? We've just provided... We've had corporations that just provided bad baby formula to African women. Isn't that weird?
But if you boil it down, it all goes back to what was taught to us in the art of war. Every aspect of everything you talk about that anybody has done, Sun Tzu laid it all out.
Including propaganda.
Everything. Everything. That's why it's a brilliant book.
Right. Well, and all these people have read it, for one. But also, like, I think when you establish the American hegemony, it's important to note that, like, all the greatest moments in American history have actually been caused by the establishment failing. And what I mean by this is that the entire Constitution is written to... rein in the establishment, right? To rein in the idea of there being a gentry, right? A permanent upper class. Like there should these people were all classists. They believe there should be a class.
That's why the whole thing. Yeah.
There were even like competing schools of eugenics where some were like, well, what we actually need in order to maintain upper class dominance is a social ladder so that the poor people with the best genes can fuck our daughters. Like this is like literally how these people were thinking and building hospitals for it.
Wow.
Right? Like and this is just published. Like this isn't right. A lot of stuff that sounds goofy I like to mention, like it's not that goofy, it's real. But like
it's a goofy world.
Right.
Yep.
But Teddy Roosevelt is my favorite president in American history. He's president by accident.
Solid stash.
I do have a conspiracy theory about Teddy Roosevelt, but that's because, frankly, even if it's true, it doesn't really, it's kind of like, I hope that's not true, but it's badass. So, like, the story of how that guy became president is he became a war hero, definitely sacrificed some troops to do it, but he'd made this insane charge up a hill. He was like, I bet you we'll make it. They did. Huge news story. He comes back home. He's from a wealthy family, becomes the governor of New York, and at the time, the Republicans are the party, the anti-corruption party, right? Like, fuck Tammany Hall, fuck all these corrupt politicians who've been in power for years and years and years and are just cheating and all this stuff, right? So he's like the Dewey of his time almost in a way, but fucking anti-corruption, this is my thing, and he's nationally popular, right? And William Jennings Bryan comes along and he's trying to intentionally inflate the currency in order to fuck over the banks, right? Like free silver is just like, hey, what if we doubled the money so that our debts meant nothing? This is a one-time fix, right? But fuck you and your banks, right, was kind of really the sentiment because a lot of the farmers felt like these were predatory loans. And this is the first guy who's ever done a stumping tour, right? It's the first time a candidate ever went from state to state giving speeches, right? They used to never do that. Why would you have to? You have your debate on paper, you know? There was no fucking radio, none of that. So, like, McKinley, he runs a front porch campaign. That's his answer. He's like, I'm not even going to leave my house. That's what I'm going to do. Like, fuck your tour. And
that's funny.
And he would just, like, give, like, letters from the front porch or whatever to all the newspapers because it's all getting the same amount of press. And it's just kind of mocking him. But, like, that kind of worked. But, oh, shit, we really need someone who can, like, really rally this populist wave. Right? Like, we have to take some of his voters. This guy's going to win. 2 parties have dominated him. Right? The Populist Party and the Democratic Party. And fucking they get Teddy Roosevelt, they nominate him at the convention because he's very popular. And they specifically also have an ulterior motive, which is this will ensure this guy never becomes president. Because at the time, it was not written into the Constitution that you could become the president as vice president in any other time other than a state of war, right? If the president dies in a war, then he's the president. Before then, I believe, though, it would go to Congress.
Oh, interesting.
Right.
So, it had to be during wartime. Interesting.
Right. So, it wasn't clearly defined, to be honest. It was like just kind of an oversight.
Right.
And an anarchist named Leon Soglitz comes and assassinates McKinley, who is a very big business tycoon sort of dude. And he blames it on Emma Goldman and some other people who were these anarchists at the time.
I believe I had her picture up behind me.
Oh, nice. Cool.
It was one of the pictures that I had behind me in a previous episode, I think was Emma Goldman.
Well, dude, like, this is what I think gets her deported from America. It's really an excuse to just eliminate a political enemy, right? But that notwithstanding, it's like, okay, maybe he was influenced by Emma Goldman. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe, I think, it's very possible, keeping in mind, once again, so the vice president is a powerless position. The vice president, I don't think, has ever ascended to become president in the history of America other than Andrew Johnson. right? And I forget if Harrison was before or after this, but maybe Harrison. But
I'm awful with history.
point is someone kills the president, right? Teddy Roosevelt just decides he's president now. He's
okay, cool.
The Constitution says in a time of war, this should include their war on capitalism.
My first
right?
decree as president is to make this a wartime.
Well, no, it's not that we're at war. It's that this guy is trying to start a war, right? He's advocating revolution.
Oh, interesting.
So it's not an totally unfair argument, right? So it could be that this guy really killed.
By assassinating the president, you're trying to start a war,
right?
Technically.
Right, and these people are Marxists.
That's never happened.
So, considering this, it's possible that he's just stepped in and found his opening because fuck you guys for making me vice president, or it's possible he had a hired assassin kill the president and then just took power. Either way, he was a great president.
And a badass, debatably, like total badass.
Total badass. But like part of why he's a great president is not only did he advocate the concept of strength, which is an important concept. This is the reason I loathe a left based around victimhood and advocate for a left based around strength and confidence but also, deference to truth. Anyway, is that like when he's saying speak softly and walk with a big stick, and he's getting the Panama Canal made, what he's basically ensuring is that he's not dependent on any other nation at this point to trade, and that they will become more dependent on them, right? So he adds tariffs, and then he starts making it easier for America to export its wares, right? And he's basically saying, oh, you guys are colonizing and you're taking over the world because you're fucking literal empires. It's like, all right, well, looks like we have to ensure that we are not going to have the get taken over, right? So they get all these outposts in the fucking Pacific, stuff like that, right? And frankly, it's all smart moves, because if you were going to end colonialism, which is what his fucking nephew did, right? Like, FDR has Churchill at the White House, and eventually the agreement they come to is, we'll help you. But the British Empire will probably not survive this, I'm just saying. Right? Basically, it's in his letters, he wanted an end of British hegemony. And he was like, American hegemony time. Because you people cannot be trusted with the fucking world. Because you've had how many wars with all of you? Every single time it's all of you.
And I think it's no president's job to be a globalist. It's to have your nation's interest at heart. That's what they got elected to do.
Well, and so here's the thing. Here's where it gets dicey, right? For one, Wilson, terrible human being. What exactly got America into the war? It's the Lusitania, right? Sinking of the Lusitania. Like, I think it did happen. The Maine's the one that's made up. Remember the Maine? That's late. But Lusitania was, at the very least, it's like, okay, they may have just missed, like, it's interesting. I get it. You actually, who knows? It just seems a little fishy that we got into that with Wilson's ethics and his desire for a League of Nations, right? But like, whatever, we came in, we ended that war. Once again, after they were all tired, right? It was horrific though, and after seeing that, it was like, yo, you can't use these weapons anymore. You can't gas people's faces off, right? Like, Geneva, like codes come about, and World War II comes about, and then just technology advances, so there's new things you can't do anymore. And I think if you are in that position, it's very reasonable looking at like the Nazis and looking at Japan and their territorial assertions and their ideologies of total supremacy, right?
Yeah.
This is going to I'm going to have to deal with this now or later.
Yeah.
Right?
And that saved lives on both sides.
Right, but if you don't think that FDR saw that coming before Pearl Harbor, well before it, and we know he ignored input from his
Pearl
ambassador.
Harbor's a good excuse to go do it.
That's why it was.
And he knew that Hitler would declare on him.
It's already been shown.
And on that conspiracy note,
that's not even conspiracy though. That's just like what happened.
Yeah.
Point is like what happened after that is the pretty much one of the most stable periods in geopolitical history, because America became the first country to ever take over the world, essentially half the world, right? The other half went to the Soviets. And if you look at the amount of actual wars between countries just through time, the last like 60, 70 years or whatever has been the most peaceful time in world history. So the point is, do you dismantle your enemies? How do you dismantle your enemies who seek to overthrow your power and subjugate you?
You pretend they bombed you,
while also not being a military-industrial corrupt nation.
You just pretend like they bombed you, and then you drop a nuke on them.
That's called propaganda.
Well, yeah.
Remember that, Alice?
Is there a way to do it?
The way FDR did it.
No, I mean, do you think that's? I mean, because if you're saying that, then you're definitely pro military-industrial complex to some degree.
I am.
See, like, I'm really against corruption, and I think when you have such power as basically owning all the politicians and making all the guns, there's no way that is not corrupted.
Because there's money involved, it's corrupt. Yeah. There's no way that that's not going to become corrupt and about money when in...
Well, power corrupts. Money
corrupts,
just
absolutely.
is the current abstract evaluation of power.
The power is in the money.
Somebody very
like
intelligent told me years ago that we have replaced honor with money.
I think we're all on the same page.
That's a better trade, frankly.
Yeah,
honor,
we've been going for
honor.
We've been going for like 2.5 hours, so we need to start wrapping it up. But I think
is this the first time he's ever said that? No. Oh, I thought it was always you saying that.
No, I usually don't say it.
I was just gonna kind of in closing. I think we're all in agreement that the government fucking sucks at what it does most of the time, and but it's essential in a lot of great. Well, you're not gonna agree with me on this.
You need it to counter corporations.
Yeah. You need.
That's what I think.
I mean, you can't have monopolies and oligarchies, things like that.
And so I guess that's what I'm against. I'm against the corporatization of war. Right.
Yeah, I think
taking money out of politics.
We have to have.
But you have to.
We have to have a border. We have to have military. Man, that has to happen.
I know people will think this makes me a hawk or something, but it's like, let's think. Your two biggest geopolitical enemies right now are Russia and China. What would be a really useful position? Again, Afghanistan. Oh, no, well, we don't get that one anymore. It's like, dude, you could drop bombs on both those places so easy from there. And there's all the heroin there. That's obviously why they took it. Like, I'm not saying they aren't lying, but it is, who would you rather have control all the heroin?
Me, personally.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, that's the choice you're going to have to make.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Anyway.
You're playing, I mean, that was the whole Vietnam thing, is like, should we intervening with this?
It's a big, giant chess game, and we are not the kings on the board.
Right.
Well, that's the bottom line.
Well, and if you promise that you would, right, and then you don't keep your promise, this is why, frankly, I see now that the Republicans were very right for being angry about the line in the sand comment from Obama. Because when he said this is a line in the sand, and then didn't do anything, when this guy gassed children, it's like, yo, dude, you didn't do that because you didn't want your poll numbers to drop. But I guarantee you, more children got gassed because you didn't do anything, right? Whereas if you had just dropped a fucking couple bombs, sent in some troops, and just not been a corrupt motherfucker, right? Or had the strength to...
If you had your country's interests at heart.
Well, honestly just had the backbone to say to, like, the people who seek to profit from something like Vietnam, where it's like, okay, how can we just, like, get a shit ton of equipment destroyed, lives notwithstanding? Right, so we can just keep sending planes over. The F-4 Phantoms, they go up, they go down, send 1 million more, right? Like, it was literally, like, big money. They called it the lead sled. This is how a bunch of POWs ended up in camps, right? Like, if you don't have...
Just like a conveyor belt, just like putting out money, yeah.
If you don't let those people get in fucking charge, and the American military, this guy said in Vietnam, Robin Olds, we'll wrap it up on this, it's a good point. Fucking, I swear. Robin Olds is this, he was, like, the first, like, ace in, like, 2 world wars, right? Or 3 wars, I think, actually, maybe. Because he came into Vietnam as, like, out of retirement because, like, people kept going up, kept going down, and the Air Force was completely demoralized. No one wanted to fly. They're like, dude, you keep making me fly the exact same flight pattern at the exact same time every day. They don't even have to try, right? We knew for a fact at the time that the North Vietnamese had 14 Soviet MiGs, right? We had hundreds of planes, right? So this guy sees that, like, there are no guns on the planes. And it's like, oh, the Department of Defense has decided that dogfights are a thing of the past, right? All you need are missiles for targets.
Wow.
But this plane can evade gunfire, so you don't need guns.
That's probably true.
So, nope, they welded guns onto the planes, right?
Really?
Yeah. And then they were getting in trouble, and they're like, fuck this. But basically, with the restrictions that were on them, they set this essential trap where they sent some people up at the same time they were always sending them up. The mix came. Oh, yeah, this one guy, what the fuck is his name? His name is Lieutenant Raspberries. They invented the barrel roll, right? The raspberry roll is what it's called. So these things, they couldn't turn to avoid fucking dogfights because they were all designed to just go to the target and get out.
Ah, okay.
Right? So they found that if you could do a barrel roll, you could narrowly avoid getting shot down. So they trained it, they tried it, they took out more than half of the North Vietnamese fleet in one dogfight. In 7 minutes. 7 fucking minutes. And so then all of a sudden he's a hero again. This guy like married an actress, you know what I mean? He looks exactly like Tom Hardy. I really want to make a movie about him. No one steal that idea. You heard it here first, folks.
Alice.
It's copyrighted. Fucking, he goes to Lyndon B. Johnson, and Lyndon B. Johnson's like, "How can I help you boys?" Like, and he said, and he just apparently his quote is, "Sir, let us win." Like he apparently told the president, like, you know, we could win this war in a fucking week. And by the way, when Nixon won re-election, oh yeah, we won the war in. Oh no, he said we can win this war in 2 weeks. And then when Nixon won re-election, we won the war in 2 weeks. All of a sudden, 2 weeks later, war's done.
Yeah.
And people forget that we did win. Actually,
that's funny.
We just didn't go back in when they attacked 2 years later.
It's funny, like just.
It also wasn't a war.
That's tactician, but also like just a little bit of ingenuity. Like this goes a long way.
Well, that helped, but like at the same time, dude, like if you don't allow your army to do its job, if you're willing to sacrifice your own citizens so that you can make billions on planes and guns, you are a horrible person.
Yeah, fuck you.
Right? Like, and when you see what happens when you actually, like, as much as I kind of like don't respect him for almost anything, I do respect George Herbert Walker Bush the first, right, for going in against the world's 3rd largest military in Iraq, 1 week, kick their ass, don't fucking go into Kuwait, we told you not to, and that's the only reason we gave you these guns. Get the fuck out of here. You think you can fuck with us just because we gave you some guns? We will fuck you up, right? And then all the people who weren't in his administration, who wanted to make a shit ton of money off that, where they're like Vietnam 2, they got into his son's administration, they went back in, and guess what? They sold a lot of fucking planes. So it's not that you shouldn't have a strong military, it's that you shouldn't have a corrupt military.
I agree. Cheers.
Cheers. I need water real bad.
Alice, check out The Absurd. Go check out Josh. Go check out the things he's got going on.
Coast Smokes.
And buy Coast Smokes.
You can get them online, and they're super dope.
Never sell out your own people for a war.
Yeah.
It's just not...
But always be ready for one, because, there are evil people out there. On that optimistic note.
Take it easy, Alice.